Renxue, I open a tavern and get Zhu Zhuqing drunk. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 Coup. The bronze door was stable. Kailin entered it, and after a while, she came out with a charming snake woman. You may, look here, this is a brand new, weak world, but the resources here are very rich. When our people move here, they will live a good life. Moreover, the two worlds can be switched at any time, and we can attack or defend. Kailin had a faint smile on her face. This cold and beautiful beauty was now smiling from the bottom of her heart. Yume's eyes were shining, and her charming body twisted involuntarily. She looked at the luxurious furniture in the house and murmured, "It's so beautiful, Your Majesty. In this case, why don't we occupy this place? Anyway, they are all weak guys," even if Yume was interrupted by Kailin before she finished speaking. The natives of this world are very weak, but they have the inheritance of gods here, and they can come down at any time to correct the chaos. We can't make a big fuss, and here, there is a being more powerful than the gods. A solemn look flashed in Kailin's eyes. Is it he who brought you here? Yume suddenly realized. Kailin nodded slightly and said, "That is a tavern. The owner is the strongest person I have ever seen in my life. Even the legendary Dou Dai may not be his opponent." Yume tilted her head. She had never seen Liu Chang'an's methods, so it was hard to imagine how terrifying Liu Chang'an was. "Your Majesty, is he a man?" "Yes," Kailin said. Yume's face changed and said, "Your Majesty, since he is a man, how could he ignore your beauty? Does he have any intentions?" Kailin shook his head and said calmly, "Don't think too much. That man is not someone who can be confused by women." Speaking of this, Kailin's impression of Liu Chang'an is very good. Especially now compared with the Snowy Knight of the Empire of a country, Liu Chang'an is simply the reincarnation of a saint. With invincible power, he did not do whatever he wanted. Yume chuckled and said, "Your Majesty, since that person is the strongest, why don't you send me over? If I can confuse him, then wouldn't our snake people be able to easily occupy this world?" Kailin shook his head slightly. This subordinate was too confident. Not to mention Yume, even if he seduced Liu Chang'an himself, it would probably not cause the other party to change at all. Don't worry about it for now. I will let you get familiar with this world as my right-hand man. And I will continue to challenge the worldly wine and revive the butterfly. When mentioning the butterfly, a trace of pain flashed in Kailin's eyes. At the same time, the business in the tavern became more and more popular. With the gods serving as waiters, people's enthusiasm for challenging the worldly wine has increased a lot. Considering that there is not much need for too many waiters, Liu Chang'an divided the work among the elemental gods. The goddesses acted as maids, and people like the fire god were used to warm the wine and cook. The dark god and the earth god joined the ranks of the Deming and Derming. The space god and the wind god are waiters, delivering information to the tavern. These gods joined the tavern with the lowest status, and Yang could order them around. This was also Liu Chang'an's punishment for them. "Boss, your business here is really getting bigger and bigger." Bibi Dong approached Liu Chang'an and said with a smile. Liu Chang'an nodded slightly. "Why are you still staying here? Don't you need to go back to the spirit hall to deal with things? Everything is on the right track now. In fact, it's the same with or without me." Bibi Dong said with a smile. Liu Chang'an nodded. Bibi Dong was indeed not that important. Bibi Dong's mouth twitched, and she was quite dissatisfied with Liu Chang'an's casual nod. At this time, she said again, "Boss, the Tiando Empire is now in a panic. What do you think if Emperor Zhu issues a confession of guilt and abdicates the throne? Whatever you do, I don't care, as long as you don't commit too many murders." Liu Chang'an said lightly. Bibi Dong hummed, looked into Liu Chang'an's eyes, sighed, and said, "Boss, I'm suddenly very curious. Why are you?" "I won't answer." Liu Chang'an shook his head. Bibi Dong pouted, revealing a girl's coquettish expression. She thought that after experiencing the event of the gods come in, Liu Chang'an would look at her differently, and maybe they would get married directly without waiting for thousands of years. The result was no different from before. On the contrary, she was getting more and more involved. She originally said that she would wait for time to slowly soak up her inner feelings. But now it seems that the more she invests, the more she can't wait. In the Tiando Empire, the news that the tavern owner suppressed the gods alone has spread. There is also the matter of the Qian Dou Empire sending troops to besiege the tavern. The more shocked people are by the tavern owner's power, the more they are afraid of the fate they will face. Will it be bad for themselves? After all, the boss made the Xingluo Empire have good weather and no disasters for 30 years, and he can also punish them with 30 years of natural disasters and man-made disasters, which they cannot prevent. But the most worried are the nobles. They cherish their lives, and they have jointly written several letters hoping that Emperor Zhu Yi can give an explanation and actively apologize to the tavern. But Emperor Zhu Yi seemed to be deaf to their demands. He completely ignored their demands and sent people to kill several of the most stubborn nobles. He also granted their fiefs to a new duchess. It was crazy. What qualifications did the most beautiful woman in the world have to become a duke except for her beauty and strength? She was actually granted a fiefdom directly. The people were even more confused. A storm was brewing. In the room where Zhu Ben was imprisoned, Prince Zhu Zhuqing came to see him again and sighed. Zhu Ben, Marshal Zhilong doesn't want to get involved. He is only loyal to his brother. He will not intervene in the conflicts between the princes. Moreover, he raised the question of why Emperor Zhu Yi's current methods are so cruel. Zhu Ben hit his forehead in annoyance. Damn it, can't I borrow anyone's help? Uncle, have you contacted Queen Medusa? What did she say? Prince Zhu Zhuqing sighed and said, I contacted her. She said, because the tavern owner didn't let her do it, the blood on Zhu Ben's face disappeared instantly, and his lips trembled. He finally understood what the tavern's punishment for Qian Dou was. But it was too late. Zhu Ben smiled bitterly and said, Uncle, I'm afraid our Qian Dou is really going to be finished. Prince Zhu Zhuqing asked in confusion, it hasn't reached that point yet, has it? Zhu Ben shook his head and said dejectedly, since it's the boss's intention, how can we possibly resist? Quickly prepare a carriage for me and let Douluo escort me. Now only the tavern can change the fate of our Qian Dou. This, okay. Prince Zhu Zhuqing said in surprise. Chapter 202. Confession of Sins. Zhu Ben is a very decisive person, and his political sense is even better than Prince Zhu Zhuqing. After discovering that the tavern was involved, he decisively withdrew and went to the tavern. Prince Zhu Zhuqing did not understand, but supported it, and immediately asked Douluo to escort him. So, a carriage quietly left Qian Dou City and went straight to the tavern. After running for hundreds of miles, two figures blocked the carriage on the official road. Prince Zhu Ben, you're under house arrest by His Majesty. Where are you going now? Come back. Both figures were wearing the armor of the palace guards, and the soul power they exuded reached the level of titled Douluo. You know, except for the guest official Douluo, the Qian Dou Empire does not have any helpers at the level of titled Douluo. Zhu Ben came out of the carriage and said with a go, you too, I went to the tavern this time because I was invited by the boss to ask for forgiveness. Snakespear Douluo laughed and said, Prince Zhu Ben, you can't deceive me, so just go back obediently. Don't worry, no one will hurt you. At this time, spirit rings began to rise under the feet of Snakespear Douluo and Thorny Porpoise Douluo. All 9. A total of 18 spirit rings were shining rhythmically. Zhu Ben's face changed. Fortunately, he called Poison Douluo, otherwise he would really be escorted back. And the current situation also proves one thing, Zhu Zhuqing is related to the Spirit Hall. This is definitely the worst news. Thinking of Zhu Zhuqing who had turned into a woman, a stunning beauty, and the boss who had commented on Qian Renxue of the Angel Clan, he immediately made the connection. When did the Heaven Dou Empire have other titled Douluos? How come I didn't know that you two had joined the Heaven Dou Empire? Poison Douluo suddenly appeared beside Zhu Ben. Old Poison, it's not your business to manage what's going on here. The boss has acquiesced to this happening. Are you going to disobey? Thorny Porpoise Douluo said proudly. Poison Douluo's face changed and he was in a dilemma. Yes, the Heaven Dou Empire surrendered to the gods and sent troops to block the tavern town, and the boss's punishment was to allow Heaven Dou to be usurped. If he tried to stop it, wouldn't he be against the tavern? Seeing that Poison Douluo was silent, Avalanche panicked and shouted, Your Majesty Poison Douluo, I only ask you to send me to the tavern. I won't make it difficult for you to run for Heaven Dou. Poison Douluo sighed and said, Forget it, after all, I owe Zhu Zhuqing a favor. Poison Douluo looked at Snakespear and Thorny Porpoise Douluo and said, I'm going to take him to the tavern. Apart from that, I won't do anything for Heaven Dou. I won't leak what happened today. How about it? Snakespear and Thorny Porpoise looked at each other and nodded slightly. In that case, then good. Also, we want to advise Prince Zubeng that it is not easy for you to hide until now. Don't be self-conscious and disobey the will of heaven. Zubeng looked at them deeply and said, I know. Go. The carriage continued to run. The day after Zubeng left, the nobles united to put pressure on the royal family. Emperor Zhu ordered the execution of several nobles who had caused trouble, but not only did it fail to suppress public opinion, but it intensified the conflict. Even the people were panicked and angry, responding to the nobles, and they must ask Emperor Zhu for an explanation. It was at this time that Zhu King had suddenly summoned all the nobles to the hall and asked Emperor Zhu to come out. Emperor Zhu had already vaguely realized that something was wrong, but he was now under fire and had to come forward. Looking at the nobles in the Tiandou Empire, Emperor Zhu's face was gloomy, and he said coldly, You ate the emperor's salary, and this is how you repay me? Your Majesty, we don't want to, but you were too confused this time. Yes. How can we offend the tavern? What if the boss remembers that we have not expressed our position and imposes punishment? Your Majesty, please give a response and get the forgiveness of the tavern owner. The nobles were buzzing, and one by one asked Emperor Zhu to admit his mistake. Emperor Zhu was so angry that his body was shaking. He slapped the armrest hard and shouted, Rebellion. They are all rebellious. Zhu King hell. Why don't you drive them out? What are you still standing there for? Are you going to replace them? Zhu King sighed, and suddenly walked to the front of the nobles, as if standing with the nobles. Father, you're wrong. Zhu King looked directly at Emperor Zhu and said in a deep voice. Emperor Zhu was stunned for a moment, and said in astonishment, You, what are you talking about? I hope that my father can get the forgiveness of the tavern. Otherwise, if this goes on for a long time, there is no guarantee that the tavern owner will punish us. Zhu King stared at Emperor Zhu, and there was no war on his face. Emperor Zhu pointed at Zhu King's nose, his face red with anger, and shouted, They are all rebelling. Come. Come. Suppress them all. Father, no one will come in. No one is not afraid of death. Zhu King shook his head. The nobles stopped talking and looked at Zhu King quietly. Many nobles had been taken down by Zhu King. You rebellious son. Emperor Zhu was so angry that he saw stars. Zhu King continued, Please issue an edict of repentance and abdicate. Zhu King stepped forward and repeated loudly, Your Majesty, please issue an edict of repentance. Abdicate. Emperor Zhu stood up angrily and glared at Zhu King. The next second, almost all the nobles shouted at the same time, Your Majesty, please issue an edict of repentance. Relinquish the throne and let the wise take over. Your Majesty, please issue an edict of repentance. Voices echoed in the hall. Emperor Zhu went from anger to hesitation and then to despair. The situation was over. At this point, he could no longer save himself. Emperor Zhu fell backwards with a bang. 3 days have passed since Zhu King launched the coup. In 3 days, Emperor Zhu was imprisoned, and the throne was replaced. It has become a fact. There were also noble ministers loyal to Emperor Zhu who wanted to set things right, but they were easily suppressed by Zhu King. The news of Emperor King's enthronement quickly spread to all directions. The various forces reacted differently, but most of them just marveled and didn't care. At the same time, another large group of people gathered at the tavern. The Ocean sect who wanted to restore the quality of the martial spirit, Kailin who wanted to revive his sister, Prince Zubeng who wanted to revive Tiandou, and all kinds of ambitious people, all gathered at the tavern. In the tavern, everyone who received the news of the change of the Tiandou throne had a complicated look on their faces. Is this the boss's punishment for the Tiandou royal family? But it's just a change of emperor, the punishment doesn't seem to be that severe. Everyone was quite confused. Nine Fengzi pondered for a moment, and suddenly frowned and said, Something's wrong, something's wrong. With King He's temperament, it's impossible for him to be so fierce and decisive, unless, Nine Fengzi's face changed, and he suddenly thought about it. Fengzi, what's wrong? Bone Luo asked curiously. Nine Fengzi smiled bitterly and said, It's so well hidden that even I was fooled. It turns out that this is the punishment for Tiandou. Chapter 203 Everyone's efforts. Nine Fengzi sighed. He had made a mistake. Being 1 step late meant that he could never make up for it. The change of ownership of the Tiandou Empire was a foregone conclusion. Fortunately, there was still the tavern to stabilize the situation. The Spirit Hall was no longer as ambitious as it was at the beginning, and the Soul Master alliance they established was indeed full of sincerity. Nine Fengzi said, Uncle Gu, what we can do now is to strengthen ourselves. Fortunately, we have the most land in the tavern, and we have built many businesses to let the core clansmen come over. If Uncle Gu wants to go further, he will definitely find the direction with the boss. Nine Fengzi glanced at Douluo. Douluo nodded slightly and said, I understand. I didn't expect that there would be such a magical place and great existence in the world. Douluo glanced at several god waiters, and his pupils were still trembling slightly. Before, let alone gods coming to the tavern to work as waiters, even the advent of miracles was a legend in the records. How could I dare to imagine it like this now? At this time, a burst of hurried footsteps suddenly sounded outside the door of the tavern. Now, almost all the guests who entered the tavern walked lightly, fearing to alarm the boss. Now, such heavy footsteps instantly attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked back and saw a young man running in at the door. Zhu Ben didn't care about etiquette. He ran to the deep end of the tavern and knelt down heavily in front of Liu Chang'an. I'm Zhu Ben, the Prince of Qian Dou Empire. I meet the boss. Liu Chang'an shook his head slightly and raised his hand. Zhu Ben stood up directly. Don't kneel. Boss, I want to ask you, can the Qian Dou royal family still challenge the worldly wine? Is there a possibility of success in changing the current fate? Zhu Ben looked at Liu Chang'an with fiery eyes. Liu Chang'an nodded slightly and said, of course you can. Zhu Ben was overjoyed and hurriedly said, Boss, I want to challenge the worldly wine. It's up to you. Liu Chang'an said casually. He could foresee that Zhu Ben, although he was calm, would not be able to challenge successfully. The difficulty of challenging the worldly wine was actually almost the same as the difficulty of fulfilling his wish. Can Zhu Ben turn the tide in this situation? The hope is naturally slim. So, the probability of his success in challenging the earthly wine is also the same. Everyone in the tavern looked at Zhu Ben with doubts. Even if Zhu King had ascended the throne and became an emperor, Zhu Ben would not be so anxious, right? And the boss is kind. Since he didn't say anything at the beginning, he will definitely not punish Qian Dou again. Why is Zhu Ben so anxious now? Zhu Ben bought 3 bowls of earthly wine from the maid, the goddess of life. When Zhu Ben took the wine, a trace of resentment flashed across his lowered eyes. It's this group of useless gods. If they hadn't bewitched his father, how could Qian Dou be reduced to today's situation? Furious, Zhu Ben raised his head and drank the earthly wine. After 3 bowls, he sat back on the chair and raised his hand to beat his chest. Bang, 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 the dull sound attracted the attention of everyone present. In the blink of an eye, 6 seconds passed, and the frequency of Zhu Ben beating his chest slowed down. Nine Fengzi shook his head slightly and sighed, I underestimated this Zhu Ben. Unfortunately, the matter is done and he is powerless to save the situation. As soon as Nine Fengzi's voice fell, Zhu Ben's arm also fell down. It still failed, but this kid persisted for 9 seconds, and he is also a man. He behaves very differently from the playboy in the rumors. Is there any story behind it? With the tolerance of Zhu King head, it is impossible to hurt his brothers and sisters. This Zhu Ben, everyone was discussing, looking at Zhu Ben with regret and pity. Princess Dai Shishi of the Xingluo Empire saw this scene and sneered, this is the price of being an enemy of the tavern. Do you think that drinking a glass of worldly wine can solve it? If the boss didn't want to see the suffering of the people, our Xingluo army would have directly invaded the border. Although she was a young girl, Dai Shishi's tone was very domineering. Everyone present shook their heads slightly when they saw this. There was an inexplicable color in her eyes. It is worthy of the powerful Xingluo Empire. A charming little princess has such a domineering confidence. However, what they said was true. If the tavern owner did not express his inclination, they would really attack Qian Dou. And once the spirit hall did not intervene, Qian Dou would probably be destroyed. At the same time, some people twitched their mouths slightly, secretly cursing the Xingluo Empire for being too good at licking. Yes, since Prince Dai now returned to Xingluo 3 good news, statues of tavern owners have been built in almost every city in the territory of the Xingluo Empire. Those who don't know would think that the tavern owner is the patron saint of their Xingluo. In this regard, the spirit hall is much more reserved. It did not replace the angel statue at Liu Chang'an, but each of their spirit halls would engrave Liu Chang'an's words in the building. One by one, they are all masters of licking. Extremely shameless. But no one dared to mock this, for fear of being misunderstood as having a problem with the boss. At this time, a strange fragrance came in. Everyone present, especially the men, couldn't help but twitch their noses, trying to find out the source of this strange fragrance. Soon, the two women who came into the tavern solved the doubts. It was the fragrance emanating from them. The most beautiful woman in the world, Queen Medusa. Following her, there was a charming and coquettish woman with black hair, deep facial features, and quite exotic. As soon as the two women came in, they heard a slight sound of swallowing saliva in the tavern. Stunning. Yu Mei followed behind Kai Lin, scanned the surroundings, and noticed Liu Chang'an at first sight. The temperament exuded by Liu Chang'an is beauty, which directly matches the beauty of the great way of heaven and earth. Some people regard big as beauty, big eyes, big breasts, and big buttocks, while others think that small and exquisite is beauty. There are countless definitions of beauty, but in Liu Chang'an, it is directly the embodiment of beauty. At this time, the attraction on the great way. Looking at Liu Chang'an's deep peach blossom eyes, Yu Mei smiled foolishly. There was only one thought in her mind: if she could marry the other party and be the other party's woman, it would be worth dying. Kai Lin took a few steps and suddenly found that there was no sound of following behind her. Looking back, she almost got angry. Her subordinates were actually crazy about flowers. It was too embarrassing for herself. Kai Lin said coldly, "What are you standing there for?" Yu Mei came back to her senses, blushed, and hurriedly followed, whispering, "Your Majesty, I can sacrifice myself for our race's record, please give me to the boss." Kai Lin glanced at her coldly and said, "That's a nice thought. You are willing to give it, but don't you think that others will accept it?" Yu Mei was stunned for a moment. Can anyone resist our temptation? Kai Lin sneered and stopped talking nonsense with her. Go and daydream. Chapter 204. Resurrection of Butterfly. Yu Mei was not convinced to hear the queen belittle herself like this. How could a man not be tempted by such a charming beauty? Is there a cat in the world that doesn't steal fish? She took the initiative to get close to him, and was she afraid that Liu Chang'an would not be tempted? The queen just couldn't move on and didn't understand men, so she made such a wrong judgment. Thinking of this, Yu Mei couldn't help it. She finally got moved once, and she couldn't miss it easily. "Queen, just wait and see." After transmitting the voice, Yu Mei quickened her pace, bringing a gust of fragrant wind, and approached Liu Chang'an with a sweet smile. Kai Lin curled her lips and hugged her shoulders, but didn't stop her. If Yu Mei succeeded, the snake people would really be able to leap over the dragon gate and take off directly. It didn't matter if she failed. Anyway, it was Yu Mei who was embarrassed. Yu Mei ran to Liu Chang'an like a flower, spun around, her long black hair fluttered, and fell to Liu Chang'an. In her expectation, Liu Chang'an would hug her waist. Then she hooked her arm around Liu Chang'an's neck and kissed him directly. Bang! When Yu Mei was half a meter away from Liu Chang'an, she just turned half a circle, and her face seemed to hit a transparent wall. Her lips and nose were pressed, and her gums were exposed. Yu Mei took 2 steps back, rubbing her painful face, and looked at Liu Chang'an in astonishment. "What do you want to do?" Liu Chang'an said lightly. Yu Mei pouted her lips. She could hear that there was no emotion in this man's voice. Her flirting was really thrown to the blind. But why? A beauty like her took the initiative to come to the door, and there was really a man who ignored her? Could it be that he was incompetent? Yu Mei could only guess this possibility. Everyone present looked at her with a teasing look. No matter if you were a peerless beauty or a charming wife, you will not get special treatment from the boss. Zhu Zhuqing hugged her shoulders, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She was very fortunate now. Fortunately, she joined the tavern by accident at the beginning of its arrival, and then experienced all kinds of things, and she took the initiative to devote herself, so that she could have a relationship with Liu Chang'an. If it was a little later, I'm afraid that I would be rejected by Liu Chang'an like Yu Mei. Zhu Zhuqing snorted lightly. Little slut also wants to get promoted? Go get in line. Lena narrowed her eyes and stared at Yu Mei, realizing that this might be a strong rival who can sell coquettishness. Enough, don't embarrass yourself. Apologize to the boss. Kai Lin said in a cold voice. Kai Lin looked at Liu Chang'an, and a touch of admiration flashed in her eyes. There are too few men who are not lustful now, especially those who are powerful. Kai Lin has seen many men, but Liu Chang'an is the only one who has no emotional ups and downs when seeing her appearance. She also has a very good impression of Liu Chang'an. Yes, I'm sorry, boss. Yu Mei sighed. It's okay, don't have a next time. Liu Chang'an shook his head. Yu Mei said unwillingly, Boss, do you hate me? Although it's the first time we met, I can feel that my heart beats very strongly when I saw you for the first time. I like you, boss. Liu Chang'an frowned slightly, and then relaxed again. She thought it was another crazy girl who was concerned about her strength and background, but after sensing the other party, she actually fell in love at first sight. However, Liu Chang'an had no idea to respond to this feeling. He now pays attention to eye contact, and will take the initiative to extend an olive branch if he is interested. Quiet. Yume closed her mouth and looked at Liu Chang'an eagerly, almost dripping with water. Kailin said, "Boss, I want to resurrect someone, is it okay? As long as you remember her." Liu Chang'an said. Kailin was excited and hurriedly said, "I want to challenge the worldly wine." Liu Chang'an nodded slightly, waved his hand, and 3 bowls of worldly wine appeared in front of Kailin. Seeing this scene, Yume's eyes widened. Is this the worldly wine that the queen has been thinking about, the source that brought them to this world? Kailin did not drink it immediately. She wanted to close her eyes and sort out her wishes. Just resurrect the sister. When did you resurrect the sister? If you still have admiration for that man, your sister will definitely have a hard time. Moreover, during that period, my sister lost her memory. The feelings under the situation, Kailin didn't want to admit it. She thought, let Dai revive when we are separated. Opening her eyes, Kailin first smiled at Liu Chang'an. A smile brings out all the charm. A light flashed in Liu Chang'an's eyes. Kailin couldn't help but curl up her lips. It seems that the boss is not a man who is heartless. Will he be shocked by her beauty? Of course, Kailin didn't realize that all the men who saw her sincere smile just now almost lost their minds. In her eyes, there was only Liu Chang'an. At this time, she had drunk 3 bowls of earthly wine. Resurrection, die. Kailin closed her eyes and pondered. 1 second, 2 seconds, after 10 seconds. Kailin's body did not move. In front of her, a red light suddenly appeared, condensing into a figure that was almost exactly the same as her. It was like looking in a mirror. Yume covered her mouth and her eyes widened. Actually, she was really resurrected. The others who watched this scene were shocked by 2 exactly the same beauties. Many men drooled. They could hardly control themselves for a Medusa queen. Now the stimulation was doubled, and not losing legs immediately was already a result of great restraint. Dai, who was opposite Kailin, slowly opened her eyes. Sister. Didn't Dai escape using the space secret technique? How could it be? Dai rubbed her forehead, still not understanding the situation. Kailin could no longer control her emotions and hugged her sister. Dai. You're back. Sister. Dai murmured. I will explain everything to you, you just need to know that no one can hurt us now. You are safe, I am safe too, and no one can hurt you with sister here in the future. Kailin's eyes sparkled with tears, and she looked at Dai and said forcefully. Dai smiled, I know, sister. Everyone watched this scene quietly, and they were all happy for Kailin. There was no way, the world of soul masters also looked at faces. That's great. Seeing the sincere feelings between sisters, I thought of my brother. I cried, and my brother cried too. A bunch of low-level men. Xiao looked at this scene with surprise. She was moved and thought that she should go up and ask for advice on how to revive her relatives. Although her mother would recover sooner or later just by waiting for time, that was only a soul. She still had to find a body for her mother, and she didn't want to owe Bibi Dong a favor. Too weird. Pa pa pa, a round of applause rang out. It attracted everyone's attention. At the door of the tavern, everyone from the Ocean sect came in. Yu Xiaogan clapped his hands and said, it is verified with my formula. As expected, Kailin's challenge success rate is extremely high. It's not surprising at all. Chapter 205 Dangerous Yu Xiaogan. They are from the Ocean sect. They stood on the opposite side of the tavern, surrendered to the gods, and dared to interfere with the tavern business, so the quality of their martial spirits has been reduced by half. They actually dared to come, but this is the only way to recover. If Yu Xiaogan's formula is true, they should be able to recover quickly, right? The people present were talking in a low voice. When they saw the people from the Ocean sect, they no longer had any awe in their eyes. The current Ocean Hammer martial spirit is not the best weapon martial spirit in the world. It can't even be ranked in the top 10 among weapon martial spirits. Everyone's eyes are more focused on Yu Xiaogan. After all, Yu Xiaogan's mysterious formula may be a shortcut to challenge the world wine. It is difficult for anyone not to be tempted by this. Yu Xiaogan enjoyed the feeling of being watched, and his heart slowed down a little. In fact, he still couldn't produce any results, but as long as these people are still greedy, he has the confidence to continue to deceive. Although there is no formula, he can probably guess the success rate of others with his intuition. As expected of the most beautiful woman in the world, Miss Kaylin is not only beautiful, but also has a firm mind that is beyond reach. Liu Chang'an smiled. He was not a eunuch, so of course he had some thoughts about Kaylin. Moreover, now that he was abandoned by Bibi Dong, he could only slap Bibi Dong in the face by getting the favor of the most beautiful woman in the world. Unfortunately, Kaylin ignored him, as if she didn't hear him. Liu Chang'an was embarrassed for a moment, and comforted himself in his heart. Sisters must have a lot to say when they meet again. Sister Kaylin, can I ask you about your experience in resurrecting relatives? At this time, Xiao couldn't help asking. Kaylin didn't treat Xiao's air. Looking at Xiao with red eyes, she was slightly startled, and suddenly remembered herself during the period when she lost her sister, and was quite moved. I'm willing to share, but I don't know how much reference I can give you. Thank you, Sister Kaylin. Xiao said in surprise. Kaylin smiled and said, first of all, you must be clear about your wish. The clearer you are, the better. For example, when do you want to revive your relatives and to what extent? In short, you must be clear. As soon as Kaylin started, everyone present took out paper and pen and began to record. This is the experience of 2 successful challengers. Much better than Liu Chang'an, the clown who only pretends to be cool but never tells the truth. Xiao nodded vigorously, and these words were imprinted in her heart. Kaylin continued, when it comes to the specific challenge, the illusion we face is extremely real, and we should forget that it is just a challenge, but treat it as reality. Kaylin told the story in detail. Everyone present benefited a lot. You know, those who succeeded in the previous challenge did not share their success stories. A round of applause rang out, and everyone was sincerely grateful to Kaylin for sharing his experience. The applause gradually died down. Liu Chang'an said again, unwilling to be left out. Miss Kaylin is really smart. She was able to deduce such useful information based on only 2 experiences. You know, I used hundreds of data to deduce these few. ! Everyone looked at Liu Chang'an with a cautious look. Good man, is this clown bragging, or is it really true? Could it be that this clown really turned over? Someone asked. Liu Chang'an. You said you also figured it out, do you have any evidence? Liu Chang'an smiled confidently and said, these are all confidential, I shouldn't have said it. Now that I feel that Miss Kaylin is so righteous, I will also offer an experience. In fact, we can predict whether we can succeed in the challenge. Before we challenge, ask ourselves, can we give up our lives for this wish? If there is any hesitation, there is no need to consider it, it is impossible to succeed. Of course, this is just the most superficial application. I can't say the deeper connection formula. Liu Chang'an glanced at the group and saw that the playfulness on the faces of everyone present had disappeared. Liu Chang'an kept a straight face and poker face. But in his heart, he was so happy. That's it. That's it. As long as he maintains his master's demeanor, sooner or later he will have a chance to turn things around. Someone asked again. Liu Chang'an, you are so confident, then can you judge whether Xiao can succeed in the challenge? And everyone in the Ocean sect, using your formula, can you succeed in the challenge? Everyone looked at Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an looked calm, first pointed at Xiao and said, Xiao's challenge success rate is 75%. Resurrecting his mother, and with Kailin's successful experience, Liu Chang'an speculated that Xiao should have a high probability of success. After a pause, Liu Chang'an looked at everyone in the Ocean sect again and said, I'm sorry, my formula is not complete yet, so I can't use it for everyone in the Ocean sect. But, I can speculate that my disciple Tang-san has an 87% chance of success in the challenge. Everyone can wait and see. Liu Chang'an was very confident. In terms of mental firmness, he had never seen anyone more powerful than Tang-san. Everyone was talking about it, their eyes moving between Xiao and Tang-san. The probability of these 2 people succeeding in the challenge is so high. Is it true? If it is exactly the same, then their attitude towards Liu Chang'an will change. Xiao couldn't wait any longer. She came to Liu Chang'an with a firm expression, I want to challenge the earthly wine. Xiao was now very confident. She picked up 3 bowls of earthly wine one by one and poured them into her stomach. When she finished the 3rd cup, her face turned red. She held the counter and kept patting her face. Ermin hurried forward and held Xiao's shoulders. The moment he touched Xiao, Xiao seemed to feel that she had someone to rely on and fainted directly. Xiao failed in the challenge. Liu Chang'an was not surprised at her failure, because Xiao's mother had the hope of resurrection, so Xiao had a way out and could not devote herself to it. However, Liu Chang'an did not remind him, and the reward Xiao gave him was the blood of the ancient evil head, which could be given to others. Everyone looked at Liu Chang'an dimly. 75%. But Xiao's performance was totally different from this probability. Liu Chang'an's expression remained unchanged, but he began to panic in his heart. He looked at Tang-san. Xiao-san, just follow what your master taught you, do what you can, and don't make random wishes. Tang-san frowned. In fact, Liu Chang'an didn't teach him any formula. He just asked him to make a wish not to involve the Ocean sect and to be alone. But how could he be so selfish? After drinking 3 bowls of worldly wine, Tang-san lasted for 8 seconds. Before the 9th second, he passed out drunk. Swish, almost everyone looked at Liu Chang'an. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 206 Becoming a Clown Again, 87%. Xiao was in front, and Tang-san was behind. In Liu Chang'an's judgment, both had a high probability of success in the challenge, but they failed one after another. As a result, they began to doubt Liu Chang'an's attitude. Could this clown be pretending again? In fact, he has no real talent at all, and he has been pretending. The faces of the people in the Ocean sect also changed. They have always treated Liu Chang'an well and treated him as a guest of honor. Now Liu Chang'an's performance is different from his usual self-praise. The 7th elder was the first to lose his temper and asked loudly, "Master, didn't you say that Tang-san's probability of success in the challenge is 87? What's going on? And you never told us about your formula." The eyes of the people in the Ocean sect looked at Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an's face flushed and his throat rolled. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad. What formula does he have? Now that 2 consecutive failures have occurred, others' trust in him has been greatly reduced. A trace of panic flashed in Liu Chang'an's eyes. If he didn't do something, he would become a complete clown and there would be no chance of recovery. Liu Chang'an pretended to be calm and shook his head, saying, Xiao-san failed, not because my formula was wrong, but because he temporarily expanded the scope of his wish. The 87 I mentioned refers to the probability that he only let his own martial soul recover. But at the critical moment, he should not have listened to my advice and wanted to restore all of your martial souls, which is why it became like this. If he could listen to me, there would be a great chance of success. Liu Chang'an became more and more confident as he spoke. He was confident, but the eyes of others looking at him were still full of doubt. Tang Xiao said in a deep voice, "Master, please share that formula to save our Ocean sect from the water and fire. After this matter, Master will be the most honorable benefactor of a Ocean sect. Our Ocean sect will go through fire and water for Master, and will not hesitate." Liu Chang'an's face was stiff. He did have a formula to deal with it, which was very mysterious, and he was sure that these people would not be able to see it. But it can't improve the success rate at all. If the people of the Ocean sect use this formula to challenge, and no one succeeds, that would be fatal. Can't hand it over. But if you don't hand it over, you'll definitely be questioned. The eyes looking at him were already full of amusement. "Master?" Tang Xiao asked again. The 7th elder sneered and whispered, "Master, it shouldn't be that you can't take it out, right?" Liu Chang'an swallowed his saliva, a flash of embarrassment flashed across his face, and he shook his head and smiled. "How could it be? It's just that my formula is not perfect yet. It's hard for you to succeed in the challenge now. And this formula, the premise is that you believe in me, but now it seems." Liu Chang'an shook his head and threw the responsibility to the people of the Ocean sect. But the formula actually involves trust, which made everyone listen even more mysterious and unbelievable. Someone laughed and said, "I think this clown has run out of tricks." "Yes. What formulas? They are all lies. What a joke. He must be fooling the Ocean sect. Now people need the formula, but he can't produce it." The laughter was like a knife and a gum forcing Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an's pupils swayed and his face was stiff. He couldn't accept such an ending. Liu Chang'an suddenly looked at Liu Wolong and forced a smile. "Now besides Xiao-san, only Erlong trusts me the most. How about this, let Erlong challenge Chen Shijiu?" "She? No, Master, you pushed out a woman. Where does this put our Ocean sect?" The seventh elder looked unhappy. Yu Xiaogang said, "Who says women are inferior to men? If everyone in a Russian sect trusts me and uses my formula, the success rate will be higher, and naturally there will be no need for Liu Wolong to take action. But now only Liu Wolong can meet the requirements. Don't worry, the probability of Liu Wolong's challenge being successful is 77%. She can let Sect Master Tang Xiao recover first," Yu Xiaogang said seriously. Tang Xiao frowned slightly. In fact, he wanted to challenge himself more, but he still believed in Yu Xiaogang a little. He looked at Liu Wolong and bowed, saying, "Then I'll trouble you, Miss Liu." "You're welcome," Liu Wolong said embarrassedly. "Formula." Yu Xiaogang didn't give her any formula at all. Now it's clear that she is pushing herself out to calm the situation for him. Liu Wolong stepped out and passed by Yu Xiaogang. "Erlong, help me, I can't just let it go like this. Just think of it as a success for me. I promise you, if you succeed in the challenge, we can secretly be husband and wife." Yu Xiaogang quickly transmitted the message, with a strong pleading look in his eyes. Liu Wolong felt a pain in her heart. This was the result she had been looking forward to the most, but now it was in front of her, and she only felt disgusted. This was the last time, and then they would be separated. Liu Wolong thought so, and did not reply to Yu Xiaogang. She had already decided that after the challenge was over, regardless of success or failure, she would buy the supreme forgetfulness wine and completely forget Yu Xiaogang. "Boss, I want to challenge the earthly wine." Liu Wolong smiled bigly. Liu Chang'an hummed and gave Liu Wolong 3 bowls of earthly wine. Seeing this, Liu Chang'an, relying on his omniscience, actually knew all about Yu Xiaogang's situation. He was really seeking fame and reputation. Facing the danger of being exposed, he actually pushed a woman out. What formula? It was just a joke. Maybe there really was a formula for challenging the earthly wine, but it was definitely not something that Yu Xiaogang could deduce. The more she knew about the inside story, the more she thought Yu Xiaogang was ridiculous and funny. "Chang'an, can she succeed in the challenge?" Bibi Dong asked curiously. In order to get closer to Liu Chang'an, she stopped calling him boss and changed to his name. Liu Chang'an shook his head slightly. Liu Wolong's feelings for Yu Xiaogang were no longer passionate and pure. How could she succeed? At this moment, with a plop, Liu Wolong only lasted 3 seconds before she passed out drunk. Is her chance of success in the challenge 77%? I'm afraid it may not even be 37%. Ding! Liu Wolong failed in the challenge of the mortal wine. Punishment. Locking her soul power for a year, and her martial soul will mutate malignantly. Liu Chang'an remembered Tang San's punishment just now, which reduced the qualification of Tian King IV by 10%. In comparison, Liu Wolong's punishment was much more severe. Bibi Dong sighed softly and murmured, "How could I fall in love with that kind of man? I hope you can think it through." Bibi Dong suddenly felt a little fortunate. At least she was not as stupid as Liu Wolong. While everyone was not paying attention, she quietly put her hand into Liu Chang'an's hand. She wanted to get some warmth from Liu Chang'an. "Pa!" Liu Chang'an slapped her slender hand away. Bibi Dong looked embarrassed for a moment, then pretended to raise her hand that had been slapped away and combed the hair on her ear, as if she had just been hit by Liu Chang'an accidentally. But her delicate earlobes were already red. Chapter 207 Ruined. Yu Xiaogang looked quietly at Liu Wolong lying on the ground. His face first turned livid, then flushed, and then gradually faded away, turning as pale as paper. It's over, his reputation will be completely ruined. Yu Xiaogang's neck was stiff, he couldn't turn, but those contemptuous glances were like swords shooting at him. "Calm down, calm down, calm down." Yu Xiaogang frantically hinted to himself, trying to find a reason to explain. Flanders didn't care about Yu Xiaogang, and ran to Liu Wolong quickly, helped Liu Wolong up. "Erlong," Flanders' voice broke the silence. The eyes in the tavern shifted to Yu Xiaogang. "Fuck. This master is really deceiving us." The seventh elder shouted loudly, his word full of resentment. Tang Xiao held down the seventh elder and shook his head slightly. "People make mistakes, horses stumble, be more tolerant. But when I think of this old guy pretending to be cool in front of us, and we still put on a smile and treat him well, I'm so angry." The seventh elder was indignant. The faces of the people in the Russian sect were not very good. They came here with great hope, largely because of the confidence given by Yu Xiaogang. Now they have been fooled by Yu Xiaogang. If this place is not a tavern, they must beat Yu Xiaogang up. See. This clown is really pretending, ha ha ha. With his knowledge that is all plagiarized, he can also get the formula of Challenge the World wine. It's ridiculous. I just want to know how many fools have been fooled by this clown. ... The tavern soon rang with laughter. They laughed at Liu Chang'an, and their words were full of gunpowder. The people who were fooled by Liu Chang'an before were now full of malice. Nine Fengzi shook his head slightly and sighed. From now on, the name of the master is completely nailed to the pillar of shame. Bone Luo laughed and said, "You deserve it. If you don't have the ability, don't pretend. Liu Chang'an, you clown. If I were you, I would be ashamed to death now. Why don't you die?" Some people couldn't help but laugh at the people around them and questioned Liu Chang'an angrily. Liu Chang'an's body trembled violently, but he couldn't turn around. Every word was like a sword or a spear that hurt people, constantly threatening him. He trembled, he wavered, and he suddenly covered his chest. Liu Chang'an suddenly raised his head and spit out a mouthful of blood mist. After this mouthful of blood, Liu Chang'an seemed to have lost his confidence and fell backwards heavily. But no one came forward to help him. The teachers of the Ocean sect, the Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus Rex family, and even the Shriek Academy did not come out to help him, as if they regarded him as a stinky dog shit that no one wanted to get involved in. The mocking and cursing voices were still ringing. The color in Liu Chang'an's eyes gradually disappeared. It's over, completely over. After being discovered today, he no longer has the capital to turn things around. Everyone will look down on him. Prove himself and slap Bibi Dong in the face. Don't be kidding. Right and wrong, success and failure are all in vain, and the ups and downs of life seem to have become a dream. Liu Chang'an stared at the ceiling blankly. At this time, he could no longer accept any stimulation from the outside world. Enough. Everyone, be quiet. No loud noises are allowed in the tavern. And that kid, why did you rush out? Do you still want to hit people? Don't you take the rules of my tavern seriously? Ermin shouted loudly and came out to organize discipline. The tavern instantly became quiet. No matter how angry they would never dare to violate the rules of the tavern. Flanders remembered Liu Chang'an at this time, and ran to Liu Chang'an in a hurry, with tears in his tiger eyes. "Chang'an, you have to cheer up." Everyone showed a gloating expression. At this time, another group of people entered the tavern. This is a group of women with a cool atmosphere. They all wear short skirts and dye silk. They have beautiful faces and white skin. They all have their own beauty, but their temperaments have something in common. The popular girl group of Qian Renxue College. The leader is the dean of Qian Renxue College, who is also the agent of the girl group, the mother of Xue Binja and Xue Wu, and the mentor Xue Rulin. Behind them are the girl groups such as Xue Binja. If they are taken out individually, except for the captain Xue Binja, the other members can't enter the top 10 of the list of the most beautiful, and I'm afraid they may not even be in the top 100. But when they appear as a girl group, their charm is doubled. Many people turned their eyes away from Liu Chang'an. What's so good about a notorious clown? In the tavern, they dare not curse loudly, spit, punch and kick, but it's meaningless to torture with their eyes. It's still comfortable to look at beautiful women. Now, a small half of the most beautiful people in Douluo Continent will gather in the tavern. There will be more in the future. They can always feast their eyes. The Qian Renxue girl group, which is being watched by everyone, is not very calm now. Actually, they should have come to report their business with Liu Chang'an a few days ago, but because of the god's arrival, they didn't dare to come. Now that the situation has calmed down, they feel guilty when they come. Teacher Xue Rulin bit the bullet and led the team to Liu Chang'an. "Dear boss, I'm sorry." Teacher Xue Rulin first bowed to express her apology. Liu Chang'an shook his head slightly and smiled. "No need to be like this. It's human nature to seek benefits and avoid harm. I can understand it, and we are just cooperating." Xue Rulin's face was more ashamed, and she whispered, "Boss, we have held 132 performances during this period, all according to your instructions. Now, we want to make a suggestion to you." Teacher Xue Rulin bit her lip and looked at Liu Chang'an nervously. Xue Binja and other women also held their breath, with expectant eyes. Especially Xue Binja, a layer of mist accumulated in her watery eyes, and she was apologetic in her grievance. In fact, when the gods targeted the tavern, she wanted to come to Liu Chang'an. However, the academy and her parents were extremely strong and would not allow her to go, which would bring danger to the family and the academy. So, she was ashamed now. But in her heart, she was willing to share the hardships with Liu Chang'an. "What's the proposal?" Liu Chang'an asked. "We, the Qian Renxue girls group, hope to perform in the tavern. In this way, the tavern can be more entertaining and attract more popularity. Of course, we don't need compensation, Teacher Xiao said humbly. Although it seems that they are being taken advantage of by the tavern for free, the implicit reward cannot be viewed with common sense. In short, for the girls of the Qian Renxue girls group, if they can perform in the tavern, it is definitely a good fortune. Everyone in the tavern's eyes lit up. The charm of the first girl group in Douluo is not just talk. It's hard to get a ticket. If you can see the performance of the Qian Renxue girls group in the tavern, it will definitely attract countless noble fans. Liu Chang'an glanced at the reactions of the crowd, nodded slightly, and smiled. Okay, your compensation will be discussed later. The girls of the Qian Renxue girls group immediately cheered. Xue Binja burst into tears of joy. At this moment, a laugh came in. The treasures of our empire are all focused on developing the tavern. It's really enviable. Chapter 208 Empire. Zhu Zhuqing had entered the tavern in casual clothes. Her arrival caused a small commotion among the crowd. You know, a son of a wealthy family should not sit in the hall. Even if the Xingluo Empire flatters the tavern, the Xingluo Empire will not come here in person, just for this sense of security. Not to mention whether the tavern will be harmful to him, just look at the assassination along the way. Now Zhu Zhuqing has become the Emperor of Tiandou, and she dares to come. Everyone doesn't know whether to say she is courageous or foolish. Nine Fengzi looked at his disciple with complicated eyes. He used to be regarded as proud by him, but now he just felt that Zhu Zhuqing had hid well enough to deceive him. When Zhu Zhuqing had passed by Nine Fengzi, she nodded slightly. Nine Fengzi smiled back. At this point, it was impossible for him to expose the truth about Zhu Zhuqing without any thanks. Zhu Zhuqing came to Liu Chang'an and stood in front of the Qian Renxue girl group. Looking at the shy Xue Binja beside her, she smiled and said, "It seems that the boss's charm is really unparalleled in the world. Even the dream lover of countless men, Miss Xue Binja, is deeply in love with the boss." Zhu Zhuqing did it on purpose. She saw that Bibi Dong was too close to Liu Chang'an. If she didn't intervene, maybe one day she would have another stepfather. Xue Binja bit her lip, and a blush climbed up her face, but she didn't refute. Liu Chang'an glanced at Zhu Zhuqing lightly and said, "What are you doing here?" Zhu Zhuqing had hurriedly restrained the smile on her face. She could still distinguish the importance of things. In front of Liu Chang'an, she must take the other party's attitude as the most important. Otherwise, the Tiandou Empire can give her or take it away. "Boss, I came here to apologize to you," Zhu Zhuqing said, and was about to kneel down. Liu Chang'an raised his hand, and Zhu Zhuqing couldn't kneel down. Enough. Liu Chang'an's tone revealed a hint of impatience. He said this because he didn't want to cooperate with Zhu Zhuqing to continue acting. Zhu Zhuqing stood up immediately and responded repeatedly, looking a little embarrassed. She thought that Liu Chang'an tacitly allowed her to usurp Tiandou because Liu Chang'an looked at her differently. Now that she had contact with him, she realized that she was wrong. Liu Chang'an was punishing Tiandou, and perhaps also rewarding Bibi Dong, but it had absolutely nothing to do with her. "Boss, I want to build a temple for you in the Tiandou Empire," Zhu Zhuqing said again. "No need for this. Also, Xingluo Empire, don't build a temple for me anymore." Liu Chang'an frowned. He hadn't left yet, so why build a temple randomly? And because the tavern was omniscient and omnipotent, he could often hear prayers from temples all over the place. Annoying. Prince Diao of the Xingluo Empire responded quickly, and glanced at Zhu Zhuqing with resentment. If it weren't for this follower imitating their Xingluo, the boss would not have stopped them. Zhu Zhuqing said no more, stepped aside, and came to Zhu Beng. At this time, Xue Binja suggested, "Boss, we can perform now and see the effect." Liu Chang'an pondered for a moment, glanced around, and the men present all showed surprise. Even the women were looking forward to it. It seems that the Qian Renxue women's group is worthy at being the top of the empire. Liu Chang'an said, "You can perform on the ring, at least one in the morning and afternoon. Then, if someone wants to fight, you can give up the ring." "Okay, boss," Xue Binja said in surprise. Now it seems that they have become half of the tavern employees. This can be regarded as a relationship with Liu Chang'an, right? The Qian Renxue women's group went up to the ring happily. The fences around the ring disappeared, and gorgeous lights appeared. 1, 2, start. Xue Binja suddenly sang, and the pleasant singing instantly covered the tavern. The members of the women's group all took their long legs and danced in a charming posture. long white legs, seductive poses. They were like a group of ice elves, dancing between heaven and earth, and with the singing and music, it was almost like a vision. Such a close-up performance stunned everyone present. Some men even started to wipe their mouths. Liu Chang'an nodded slightly. Yes, it was a good decision to let the Qian Renxue girl group come to perform. Boss, can I go up and join? At this time, Kailin didn't pay attention, and Dai actually ran in front of Liu Chang'an, asking with sparkling eyes. Liu Chang'an was slightly startled, looking at the sunny and beautiful woman in front of him. Do you want to dance? Yes, I heard from my sister that I was resurrected because of the boss. So I want to repay the boss, so I use dance, okay? The dance of our snake people is also very beautiful. Dai grabbed the big black and shiny braid on her chest and said shyly. Liu Chang'an nodded and said, go. Thank you, boss. Dai grinned, and her snake tail shot out and ran to the stage. Dai was not exaggerating. She had excellent dancing skills. Listening to the melody of the song, she naturally entered the dance and integrated into the Qian Renxue girls group, like lighting a fire in the ice and snow. At this moment, the men in the audience began to shake their legs. So beautiful. You know, Dai's face is exactly the same as Kailin's. Now it's like the most beautiful woman in the world dancing on the stage. How can it not make people fascinated? Kailin gritted his teeth, his face turned blue, but he was not very happy. Rounding up, what's the difference between going on stage to please others? If it was just for the boss, it would be fine. Now in front of so many people, Dai, this little girl, really doesn't know how to look at the occasion when dancing. However, seeing Dai dancing so happily, she was also a little moved. The women of the Snape tribe are proficient in dancing and like to dance. Like her, she is the queen of the Snape tribe, but she almost dances alone every day. It seems that she has never danced since she came to the Douluo world. Kailin looked at Liu Chang'an, wondering whether she should dance a song for Liu Chang'an alone as a token of gratitude. Zhu Zhuqing also looked at Liu Chang'an. She looked at Liu Chang'an, squeezed her legs together, and rubbed them gently. Good sister, please help your sister. If this goes on, when will I be favored by the boss? If I wait until I am old and ugly, I will. Look, there are 7 more people now, and the competition is even more intense. Zhu Zhuqing hugged Zhu Zhuqing's arm and begged. Zhu Zhuqing said helplessly, if he doesn't want to, can I still force him? Zhu Zhuqing begged. It's not like that. I can see that the boss has already made up his mind. As long as you go with the flow, it will definitely work. And in daily life, the boss will not use his divine power to look at us. So what do you mean? Zhu Zhuqing frowned. Let me accompany you tonight, my dear sister. I often hear you shouting that you can't do it anymore. It must be very hard for you to be alone, right? With your sister here, the boss can't bully you. Let's work together as sisters, Zhu Zhuqing said seductively. Chapter 209. Rejuvenating Pill. Here, Zhu Zhuqing urged her sister to find a chance for herself. Liu Chang'an was not in pure love, but he was not so keen on women. In his long life, what woman could he not get? But if she was already stripped of her clothes and delivered to his door, if he didn't hate her and it met his aesthetic standards, he might not refuse. Zhu Zhuqing thought about it and nodded softly. No matter what, she couldn't bear to see her sister live a lonely life. Moreover, there are more and more women now, and they are all stunning. If she doesn't help Zhu Zhuqing, it will be difficult for Zhu Zhuqing to stand out and get Liu Chang'an's favor first. On the other side, Tang San woke up. He pounded his head and looked apologetic. Sorry, uncle, I failed. At the last moment, I still couldn't. Tang Xiao shook his head and said, Xiao-san, you have tried your best. If you just let yourself recover, you'll definitely succeed. It is the sect that has implicated you. Hearing this, Tang San's grievances disappeared. My family and I share the same fate. How could I abandon my family? Tang San said seriously. Suddenly, Tang San looked around and didn't see Yu Xiaogang in the crowd of a Yoshin sect. He asked in confusion, Uncle, where is my teacher? Tang Xiao pointed in the direction of Yu Xiaogang and said, Xiao-san, it's not good to talk about people behind their backs. But I still have to say that your teacher, Yu Xiaogang, is probably a swindler. Uncle. Please don't say that about my teacher. Tang San's face was serious. In his heart, Yu Xiaogang's importance was second only to Tang Adao, and Tang Xiao and other clan members were even behind. Tang Xiao sighed and told what had just happened. After listening, Tang San's face changed, and he quickly got up and rushed to Yu Xiaogang. Teacher. Tang San ran to where Yu Xiaogang was lying. Flanders supported Yu Xiaogang. Liu Chang'an now had a silly smile on his face, laughing foolishly, as if he had hysterics, and didn't recognize anyone, and didn't even react when Tang San approached. Now, it can be said that people's joy is not the same. Everyone in the tavern was immersed in the performance of the Qian Renxue girls group, and had no time to pay attention to Liu Chang'an. But Tang San only thought that their performance was noisy. If it weren't for the heavy pressure from the tavern, he would have shouted to make it quiet. Tang San knelt down, held Liu Chang'an's hand, and said anxiously, "Teacher, look at me, I am Xiao San, your disciple. Teacher, wake up." Tears welled up on Tang San's face, and the big tears fell on the back of Liu Chang'an's hand. Liu Chang'an still had a silly smile on his face, and the corners of his mouth twitched, but his eyes regained some clarity. He moved his mouth with effort. Xiao San, teacher, the teacher is a clown, don't think about it, Chang'an." Flanders sighed. Tang San shook his head vigorously and said loudly, "Teacher, don't belittle yourself. You trained me. You have given me a second life. You were not a clown, you were a true master." A touch of relief flashed in Liu Chang'an's eyes, and he said with concern, "Xiao San, your punishment, the quality of my Tian Kingdom martial spirit has been reduced." Tang San hadn't finished speaking. Liu Chang'an couldn't stand the stimulation and started to have epilepsy again. His whole body was twitching violently. "Teacher!" Tang San shouted anxiously. On the other side, Zhu Ben also woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Zhu Qing's gentle smile. His pupil shrank instantly, gritted his teeth, and almost got up and ran away. "My good brother, you really gave me a lot of surprises. Why do you want to run away when you see me? Can I still hurt you? Besides, I have just obtained the boss's forgiveness. You can go back to Tiando. Don't worry, our Tiando is no longer overthrown." Zhu Qing smiled slightly and explained patiently. Zhu Ben opened his mouth and forced out a smile that was uglier than crying. Big brother, you are so awesome. If I go back, will I die?" As Zhu Ben spoke, he was almost heartbroken. Intense sorrow turned into a painful expression on his face, and white began to appear at the roots of his hair. After a few breaths, his hair turned into mottled grey. Zhu Qing smiled and shook his head. "Zhu Ben, what nonsense are you talking about? Tiando is thriving now, and I can't even accommodate you. Just be an idle prince." Zhu Ben closed his eyes in pain and whispered, "Okay, come on, it's the performance of the Qian Renxue girls group now, I'll take you to watch it. Today is a good day, don't look so sad anymore." Zhu Qing said gently. Zhu Ben was helped up by her and sat on a chair. There were people in front of him, and he couldn't see anything, but he could clearly hear Xiao Wu singing. Zhu Ben had a smile on his face, but 2 tears crossed the corners of his eyes. A few minutes later, a performance ended. Pa pa pa. Thunderous applause. Looking at the excited faces, Liu Chang'an nodded slightly and made a decision. Qian Renxue girls group and Dai all left the stage. Dai smiled at Liu Chang'an innocently, and did not follow Xiao Wu and other girls to come over, but went to Kai Dai's side. Xiao Wu looked at Liu Chang'an, with a thin layer of sweat on her face, and said, "Boss, are you satisfied with our dance?" Liu Chang'an nodded slightly and smiled, "Of course I am satisfied." "Very good, now let's talk about the remuneration. Boss, if you can let us perform here, we're all ready." Xiao Wu waved her hands repeatedly. She was already satisfied, and so were the other girls. Even if the tavern didn't give them anything, performing in the tavern itself had already brought them endless benefits. First of all, if they didn't want to, no one would dare to force them to perform. They wouldn't be forced to go on blind date when they go home. Besides, with the boss's generosity, could he really not give them any benefits? Liu Chang'an said, "Your compensation will be half of that of regular employees, plus a dose of rejuvenating pill, which can keep you young forever." Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Xiao Wu and other girls covered their mouths and looked at Liu Chang'an in surprise. For women, what is the most true love? It must be their youthful and beautiful face. Now that Liu Chang'an said that he would give out such a treasure, not to mention the Qian Renxue girls group, all the women present couldn't remain calm. Even Zhu Qing, who had been pretending to be a man and rarely showed her female body, looked at Liu Chang'an with emotion. "Boss," a pair of fiery eyes looked at Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an frowned slightly. He didn't expect that a rejuvenating pill would attract so much attention. Then, all the employees of the tavern should get a dose of rejuvenating pill. Liu Chang'an said generously. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. The women in the tavern had red eyes, full of envy and jealousy. Why couldn't they become tavern employees? And others can also take on special challenges. Chapter 210 Their Challenge. Liu Chang'an thought about it and thought that the rejuvenation pill might really stimulate consumption. Before the time travel, there was a period. In terms of consumption power, women are greater than dogs and men. Now he uses the rejuvenation pill to control female customers. Is he worried that he can't lead others to challenge the worldly wine? The difficulty of challenging the rejuvenation pill is also random, and the difficulty is different for each person. Each person has only one chance, and it is limited to 3 days. Liu Chang'an quickly added the settings. As soon as he finished speaking, the eyes of the women in the tavern lit up. Boss, can this rejuvenation pill enhance our beauty? Princess Daishishi asked excitedly. Liu Chang'an smiled and said, it won't change the bone structure, but it can change the skin quality. In the cultivation world that is more advanced than Duo, whether it is immortal cultivation or fantasy, there are no ugly women, because various exercises and pills can enhance women's appearance. Now the effect of this rejuvenation pill can also do this. The women became even crazier after hearing this, and immediately hundreds of women found maids to challenge the rejuvenation pill. At this time, Zhu Zhuqing and Douluo walked towards Liu Chang'an at the same time. They said in unison, Boss, I want to challenge the rejuvenating pill. After saying that, they looked at each other, their eyes were cold. Behind them, it seemed that a big black cat and a fox appeared, opening their mouths and showing their fangs. Liu Chang'an sent out 3 bowls of wine and said, do you need a projection? I'll go first. Yes. Zhu Zhuqing shouted. Liu hugged her shoulders and sneered, you go first, I won't compete with you. I have no experience. I want to see if you can succeed. Zhu Zhuqing looked at Liu proudly, took the 3 bowls of pink wine, and drank them all. The next second, a light curtain appeared in front of her. It showed a place similar to a stage, and the lights were all on her body. There was no one around. Suddenly, a mysterious voice came from the darkness. Are you satisfied with your appearance? Zhu Zhuqing said, satisfied. Why do you want to keep your youth? Zhu Zhuqing said loudly, to keep your youth. Why do you want to keep your youth? 2. To get the boss's love. I love my boss, and I'm afraid that one day my appearance will age and my boss will not fall in love with me, so why? Zhu Zhuqing's expression was firm and her words were resounding. She challenged the anti-aging pill, of course, because she wanted to keep her beauty, but more fundamentally, she was afraid that Liu Chang'an would get tired of her. In fact, she fell in love with Liu Chang'an earlier than Zhu Zhuqing. In the first few chapters, she was rescued by Liu Chang'an who fell from the sky, and she had already fallen in love with him. Now that she has finally gotten rid of the shackles of her identity, she must give herself to Liu Chang'an. At this time, all the light beams shining on Zhu Zhuqing disappeared. After a few seconds, the light curtain shattered. Zhu Zhuqing in the tavern opened her eyes at the same time. Her face seemed to be more shiny. She looked at Liu with pride and said, this challenge is very simple. It's too easy in front of my love for the boss. Boss, no matter how you punish me, I will say, I love you. Zhu Zhuqing shouted to Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an frowned slightly and waved his hand to seal the big cat's mouth. However, seeing that Zhu Zhuqing challenged the rejuvenating pill because of him, Liu Chang'an was quite touched. Liu immediately said, then I want to challenge too. I want to project too. Zhu Zhuqing, right. I'm not worse than you. As if to compete, Liu also unfolded the image. The same question came up, and Liu answered the same as Zhu Zhuqing. After the last beam went out and persisted for 9 seconds, the light curtain shattered. Liu returned to reality, her face full of surprise. I failed. Liu looked at Liu Chang'an in a daze. Liu Chang'an said, you are not determined enough to want the rejuvenating pill. In other words, Liu's feelings for Liu Chang'an are not as strong as Zhu Zhuqing's. After all, Liu admires Liu Chang'an more, and the emotional intersection between the two is pitiful. It's good enough to last for 9 seconds. Boss, the punishment for failure. Liu blushed. Liu Chang'an's face also became strange. He heard the punishment prompted by the system. Ding! Liu failed in the challenge of the rejuvenating pill. The punishment is that her charm is out of control and her temptation to men is enhanced. As soon as the voice ended, Liu Chang'an noticed it keenly. The breathing in the tavern became much heavier. If Liu's charm was a disturbance before, and it was close to arousing people's love, now it is pure coquettishness. The man looked at her and had only one thought, fuck. Liu looked at Liu Chang'an dimly. Boss, can you change the punishment? Everyone thought that the punishment for failing the challenge in the tavern was actually set by Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an shook his head and ignored Liu. In fact, he was quite embarrassed. Why did the system give such a punishment? This person is really weird. Liu chuckled and shook her head slightly. The boss is great and ordinary. Perhaps because of this, the boss is willing to play with the world and give us a chance. Daitian had a smile on his face. Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, he knows that Liu Chang'an is not the Emerald Dragon King. But his admiration for Liu Chang'an has not diminished at all. Liu glanced at the women who rushed to challenge the rejuvenating pill and said, "It's really pitiful. They are not like soul beasts like us. Their beauty can only last for a few decades. If it were us, we wouldn't need the rejuvenating pill. It's a boring challenge." Liu showed a proud look. Biji's face flushed and she whispered, my lord, I want a challenge, can I?" Liu was stunned for a moment. Why? I. Biji couldn't say it. Ziji continued, "It's because Biji wants to prove her feelings for the boss. My lord, I want to challenge too. I want to prove my determination too. I must give birth to the boss's seed. In this way, won't we be able to return to the God realm successfully?" Ziji stroked her belly, her charming face full of confidence. She is so smart. If she gets pregnant with Liu Chang'an's seed, her child will definitely have the strongest bloodline in the world. How exciting. Perhaps in a few years, her and Liu Chang'an's child will become a god. When they counterattack the god realm, even if they are defeated, can Liu Chang'an still sit back and watch them fail? Kill two birds with one stone. Good idea. Qian Jun clapped his hands and cheered, saying, "So, I will also find a few bear sisters for the boss. If our dark gold Terraclaw bear clan can also get the boss's bloodliner, it will definitely soar to the sky. Speaking of which, our clan can also." Kai Wang's eyes lit up. Liu's mouth twitched fiercely. Why did these guys start dreaming? Don't you think that Liu Chang'an would like it? Chapter 211 Action. Miss Biji and Lady Ziji are here too. Look, everyone. Someone shouted. Everyone looked over. Biji lowered her head, her face flushed, not used to being noticed. Especially since what she had to do now was to prove her feelings for Liu Chang'an. Ziji held her head high and was not at all nervous. Both of them were stunning beauties, with countless admirers, and were considered celebrities. Now they took the initiative to challenge the giant pill to prove their feelings. How could it not be exciting? More than 100 people have already completed the challenge during this period of time. More than half of the women did it to express their feelings to Liu Chang'an. The result was very realistic. Except for Zhu Zhuqing at the beginning, no one succeeded in that challenge, and even Dai Shishi only lasted for 9 seconds. Of course, this does not mean that they do not love Liu Chang'an enough. It is that their understanding of love is not deep and thorough enough. For example, those who lasted for 9 seconds were willing to sacrifice themselves for Liu Chang'an, and could be called devoted. Biji took the wine and didn't dare to look at Liu Chang'an. "I want to project too." The sound was not much louder than the sound of a mosquito. The light curtain appeared, and Biji replied to Zhu Zhuqing in the same way, stating that she was doing it for Liu Chang'an, and then the light beam disappeared for 10 seconds, and she successfully challenged it. At this time, Biji's jade neck was covered with red clouds. She didn't dare to look at Liu Chang'an, and ran away with her face covered. Ziji chuckled and said, "What's the big deal? If you like it, then you like it. If you go to bed with your boss in the future, won't you be scared to faint?" Ziji spoke without restraint, and saw Liu Chang'an's death sight with a glance. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Ziji's face changed drastically. "I want to challenge the anti-aging pill. I want to give birth to a child for my boss. Don't interfere with life." Projection. After Ziji shouted, her mouth was also sealed by Liu Chang'an, and she couldn't make a sound. After drinking 3 bowls of wine, the light curtain appeared. Ziji, who stood alone on the stage, didn't change much, and still looked proud and confident. "Stop talking nonsense. I challenged the rejuvenating pill just to show my attitude. I want to give birth to a baby for the boss," Ziji said directly. Immediately, all the light beams on the stage went out, and Ziji merged into the darkness. 10 seconds later, she successfully challenged and returned to reality. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Everyone present was stunned. Is this possible? How strong must Ziji's desire to give birth to a baby for the boss be? Ziji couldn't speak, so she could only give Liu Chang'an a wink. Liu Chang'an shook his head slightly, wondering whether he should punish the other party directly into a dragon egg, in one step, so as to avoid talking without restraint. Ziji's success also gave the girls a great trigger. They don't necessarily have to prove how pure and powerful their love is, but they can also show their wishes for Liu Chang'an. Moreover, it seems that the boss will not be angry because of what they said in the challenge. I want to challenge too. I want to give birth to a baby for the boss too. I want to be the boss's dog. I really want to ride on the boss. Immediately, one by one, the women were like crazy, shouting out their wishes in the light curtain. Almost all of them were very heavy and perverted, and they didn't hide anything at all. There was even a woman who hoped that Liu Chang'an would eat her underwear. All kinds of outrageous wishes were included. Listening to these wanton words, Zhu Zhuqing shook her head slightly. The women who grow up normally so repressed. What are they talking about? They completely regard Liu Chang'an as an object of sexual fantasy. She blushed when she heard it. Looking at Zhu Zhuqing's appearance, the grey-haired Zhu Ben suddenly smiled, and tears appeared in the corners of his eyes. How could he not understand that Zhu Zhuqing was a woman in disguise? It must be Qian Renxue on the beauty list. Wuhan Hall, the Angel Clan. At this moment, Zhu Ben really wanted to shout, Wuhan Hall stole the country. But he could only keep this sadness in his heart, because Liu Chang'an tacitly agreed to it. Even if he told others, what would happen? Even the gods were no match for the Tavern and Liu Chang'an. Could he still expect the nobles to join forces to resist? But if I don't take revenge on the Spirit Hall, my life would be too ridiculous. Zhu Ben fell into deep thought. At this time, Zhu Zhuqing's face changed. What is that woman doing? Why is she joining in the fun? She is the Pope of the Spirit Hall, how can she? Zhu Zhuqing was anxious, looking in the direction of Bibi Dong, and wanted to rush up immediately. Because Bibi Dong also came to Liu Chang'an. Boss, I want to challenge too. Bibi Dong smiled. She has become a god, but she still wants to challenge the worldly wine. Naturally, there is no need to say why. Especially the look in her eyes when she looked at Liu Chang'an, which was almost threat-like. Even a fool would know what she was thinking. The tavern fell silent again, and everyone looked at Bibi Dong. When the beauties on the beauty list approached Liu Chang'an, they would calm down and create a quiet space for the boss and the beauty. This is called being considerate. Of course, if an ugly girl approached the boss, they would ignore her. This preferential treatment can only be given to real beauties. Bibi Dong did not choose to project. After drinking 3 bowls of wine, she closed her eyes and remained silent. 10 seconds later, she opened her eyes and looked at Liu Chang'an with a pair of eyes that were more charming and affectionate. Boss, I am sincere. I can wait for you for 1,000 years. If you don't fall in love with me in 1,000 years, then bye. Bibi Dong did not continue, and added in her heart, then I will use force. Liu Chang'an shook his head slightly and explained in one sentence that when people become famous, they will have more gossip. To be honest, he still has a bit of mental cleanliness. When he thought that Bibi Dong even had a child, he felt a little disgusted, although Bibi Dong did meet his aesthetic point. Leave it to time. Liu Chang'an shook his head. After receiving Liu Chang'an's reply, Bibi Dong's pretty face lit up and nodded slightly. Okay, 1,000 years later, I will be a completely different me. Zhu Zhuqing saw the conversation between the two, and her heart skipped a beat. Liu Chang'an's attitude towards Bibi Dong seemed to be much softer. Could these two really be together? She felt uncomfortable when she thought of calling Liu Chang'an her stepfather. No, I must find a way to stop it. Zhu Zhuqing's eyes became firm. In order not to have another stepfather, she had to take action. Anyway, now she didn't need to hide like before. At the same time, the enthusiasm for challenging the rejuvenating pill in the tavern remained unabated. Nine Rongrong went up to join in the fun, but only lasted for 6 seconds. Her feelings for Liu Chang'an could not be called love at all. Xiao didn't even challenge. She didn't have any love for Tang San now, let alone Liu Chang'an. They were lively, but some people were immersed in a sad atmosphere. Everyone in the Asian sect had a gloomy face, which was out of tune with the atmosphere of the tavern. Yu Xiaogan was even more screwed. Perhaps the shock was too severe, and except for his head, his lower body was completely unable to move. Chapter 212. hindering stepfather's plan. Xiao-san, the teacher has become a waste. The teacher is not a master, but a clown. The teacher is sorry for you. The teacher just wants you to become useful. The teacher is unworthy at being a teacher. Yu Xiaogan was held in Tang San's arms. Now only his neck could move, and he cried loudly. He looked at Tang San eagerly. Tang San's expression changed. After listening to Tang Xiao's explanation of the cause and effect, the doubt he had about Yu Xiaogan disappeared because of Yu Xiaogan's crying. Once a teacher, a father for life. Tang San held high the banner of filial piety, and seeing Yu Xiaogan singing like this, his face immediately showed a sentimental look. He burst into tears and said, "Teacher, don't say that. You were my good teacher. You taught me how to practice as a soul master. No matter how others see you, you were my teacher anyway. You are also the most powerful master in my mind." Tang San spoke loudly, his expression firm. Yu Xiaogan cried even harder, looking at Tang San's concerned eyes. A trace of relief flashed in his eyes. No matter what, Tang San still trusts him. As long as Tang San becomes a god, he can prove himself. However, he has already cut himself off from the direction of the tavern. If Tang San gets a future of cultivation from the tavern, it will have little to do with his teaching. For the sake of purity, he must prohibit Tang San from using the power of the tavern. Yu Xiaogan held back his tears, his eyes became firm, and he said in a deep voice, "Xiao-san, you can trust the teacher, which is the teacher's greatest joy. The teacher only has you." Yu Xiaogan stared at Tang San closely. Tang San felt a strong pressure, and he hurriedly said, "Teacher, you don't only have me, but also Dean Flanders, and Aunt Liu Long." Flanders also nodded and said, "Yes, Xiaogan, what do you think of our relationship for so many years?" Yu Xiaogan's face was embarrassed, and he secretly cursed Flanders for being nosy. He pretended to be so pitiful, wasn't it just to bind Tang San? Now that Flanders came to interrupt, his efficiency in pure Tang San was slowed down. However, now he has become a useless person, and it is not known when he can recover. He really needs to maintain the relationship of the Golden Iron Triangle. Yu Xiaogan was able to bear not seeing the two brothers and sisters for more than 10 years, and he can also lower his body and pick up this relationship. "Good brother, I know that no matter how I am misunderstood by the world, you'll stand by me," Yu Xiaogan said with emotion. Well. A touch of embarrassment flashed across Flanders' eyes. "What do you mean by being misunderstood by the world? It is obviously our own bad behavior, right?" At this time, Liu Long also sobered up, and she looked at Yu Xiaogan. "What's going on?" Liu Long asked in confusion. How could Yu Xiaogan, who was fine, lie in Tang San's arms, except that his head could move, his body was as limp as noodles? Seeing Yu Xiaogan's miserable state, Liu Long's face did not show much heartache. Being forced by Yu Xiaogan to challenge the worldly wine, and being severely punished for failure, she had let go of her feelings for Yu Xiaogan and completely saw through Yu Xiaogan's face. "It's like this," Flanders explained briefly. Yu Xiaogan forced a smile and said softly, "Only when you're in a desperate situation can you figure out many things. Long, now I realize how wrong I was before. I did such a cruel thing to you because of worldly prejudice. Now I want to redeem you. Are you still willing to accept me?" Yu Xiaogan looked at Liu Long with infatuation. Now that he is a nobody, there is no reason to be arrogant. How stupid can you be to ignore such a beautiful woman like Liu Long? Even if you can't do it with real knives and guns now, you can at least let Liu Long be your nanny. "Xiaogan," Liu Long shook her head and said indifferently, "Our relationship was a mistake, I have let it go. From now on, we're just ordinary friends." Liu Long smiled bigly. She didn't even need the supreme forgetfulness wine. After being hurt by Yu Xiaogan again and again, she had already understood it herself. Long, what are you talking about? Why didn't I hear it clearly?" Yu Xiaogan looked at Liu Long in a daze. His reputation is already ruined, and his body is crippled, so he can't even keep women, right? Tang San looked at Liu Long in a pleading manner, and said in a voice transmission, Liu, the teacher can't stand the stimulation now, please coax him first." "If," Liu Long said directly. "I said, I have let go of my feelings for you." Long, Yu Xiaogan looked at Liu Long in disbelief. "I'm no longer young, and I don't plan to be alone all my life, so I have to use my time to find a good partner. Xiaogan, cousin, let's part ways in peace. Is it time to challenge the rejuvenating pill? I want to try." Liu Long turned around and challenged. Flanders kept silent, but the corners of his mouth were wildly raised to test. He was so happy. Liu Chang'an was so angry that he started to curse Liu Long. You bitch. Are you going to leave me? Have you forgotten your feelings for me before? Fake. All fake. You bitch. You must be tired of the old and love the new. You want to climb the high branch of the tavern owner. Don't you look at yourself? Do you deserve it? Puff. After Liu Chang'an cursed a few times, he suddenly vomited a large mouthful of blood and fainted. Except for Tang San, no one paid attention to him. Even Flanders went after Liu Long. The anti-aging pill launched by Liu Chang'an was a big hit for a day, which led to the challenge of the worldly wine. And the episode that happened to Liu Chang'an was only seen by a few people. Zhu Zhuqing was one of them. She found Elena and started the topic with Liu Chang'an. Nana, have you seen Liu Chang'an? A man like that can win the hearts of your teacher and Liu Long. Both women are excellent, but they fell into the hands of that kind of man and wasted their youth. It can be seen that if a woman cannot find a good man, she will be unhappy for the rest of her life. Zhu Zhuqing sighed. Elena smiled awkwardly. She still didn't understand why Zhu Zhuqing came to find her. The relationship between the two should be close, but she had never heard of the name Qian Renxue before, let alone met her. Now they are in the same room, and the other party still maintains a man's appearance, but they are talking about finding a man, which is a conversation between best friends. Elena is very embarrassed now. Zhu Zhuqing had talked about the importance of finding a man from all aspects. Why? Isn't it because she is afraid that her young and beautiful mother will find a stepfather for herself? Now she wants to match Elena up and let Elena be Liu Chang'an's woman. In this way, Bibi Dong, as Elena's teacher, should be able to give up, right? It was with this idea that she talked to Elena. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 213 What You Wish For. Zhu Zhuqing's plan was still in the works, while Zhu Zhuqing was close to success. She was in the room, facing the mirror, changing clothes one by one. Zhu Zhuqing was trying on a gauze dress in front of her plump body. Looking at her looming body, Zhu Zhuqing's face was burning, and she murmured, "Will Chang'an like this dress? Should I be more conservative? After all, I have no experience. But what if it doesn't taste good and can't arouse Chang'an's interest?" Zhu Zhuqing, that little girl, finally agreed to create an opportunity for me. I can't miss it tonight. I must spend this night perfectly. Zhu Zhuqing couldn't help shaking her body. Looking at the beautiful woman in the mirror, her eyes were about to drip with tears. Tonight, she will get what she wants. It was almost midnight, and there were 3 knocks on her door. That was the signal that Zhu Zhuqing had agreed with her. Zhu Zhuqing gritted her teeth, put on only pajamas, and ran out of the room. As soon as she walked out of the door, a dark shadow flashed by. Bang! Zhu Zhuqing's eyes rolled back and she passed out. "It's so hot," the black shadow held Zhu Zhuqing, muttered, and quickly pushed Zhu Zhuqing into the room. Liu Chang'an was invited by the goddess of life to talk with the gods. It has been a few days since the gods were suppressed by Liu Chang'an. According to the speed of time in that god realm and Douluo Star, it is almost time for them to react. That is why the goddess of life specially invited Liu Chang'an to talk, fearing that the god realm committee would make some impulsive moves. In the meeting room on the 3rd floor, the gods saw Liu Chang'an enter the room with complicated expressions. In a few days, they have begun to get used to the identity of tavern employees. Speaking of which, many of them actually find it interesting. The god realm is too boring. There are only gods and their relatives, not even servants. There is no fun. They are high above and more like high-ranking prisoners. Now as a tavern employee, there is something to do every day, and there are also excitement to watch. It is much more comfortable than in the god realm. Let's talk. If you want to challenge the earthly wine, you can continue. Liu Chang'an smiled. Although they were his prisoners, he would not humiliate them in a show of force. The gods looked at each other. The god of darkness said, "It's interesting to stay in the tavern. I'm willing to stay and won't challenge again." "Me too." The god of lights held the hand of the god of darkness and smiled. The god of wind looked at them in astonishment. If there was anyone who didn't want to be trapped in the tavern the most, it would be him, the god of wind who yearned for freedom. He smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect you all had this idea. In the end, I won't be the only one to challenge, right? Let's talk about this later. In the tavern, we can't contact the god realm. Boss, I want to ask you to let me contact the God Realm. Without me watching the God of Destruction, I'm afraid you will be impulsive. The Goddess of Life looked at Liu Chang'an worriedly. Are you afraid that I will suppress them too? Liu Chang'an smiled and asked. The Goddess of Life nodded and said solemnly, Boss, your divine power is so great that even our God Realm Committee cannot reach it. And the God of Destruction values me too much, even at the cost of destroying the heavens and the earth. I'm afraid that you will offend the boss. Don't worry, I will give you a chance to speak. However, if he still wants to come and affect the tavern and break the law, I will not let him off easily. Liu Chang'an's voice sank and he looked at the Goddess of Life and said. The Goddess of Life showed a look of surprise and quickly assured. Don't worry, boss, I will not let the God of Destruction affect the tavern. I will contact him and ask him to give up. Come in. Liu Chang'an nodded slightly and looked around. There was nothing for the other elemental gods to do, so he left the meeting room. Liu Chang'an returned to the room, and Zhu Zhuqing was gone. The woman lying on the bed was definitely not Zhu Zhuqing. Although her upper body was covered in the quilt, he could still see it. Thinking of what Zhu Zhuqing had hinted to him, he understood. He was unwilling to use omniscience to see through everything directly. For such things, it is better to be vague. Zhu Zhuqing. Liu Chang'an smiled. The fact that the other party was able to successfully challenge the rejuvenating pill showed that she loved him wholeheartedly. Now that she had done this, even Zhu Zhuqing cooperated. If he turned a blind eye and drug her out, it would be too inhumane. Moreover, he had never opened his omniscience and omnipotence, and he also wanted to give her a chance. Liu Chang'an chuckled and said, Are you shy? Zhu Zhuqing stayed in Dugain's room for a while. As both were barmaids, she and Dugain became best friends. When she left in the early morning, as soon as she stepped off the floor, a slight vibration came from the soles of her feet. Zhu Zhuqing did not enter. After all, she promised her sister, so she would completely fulfill the other party. Moreover, after carefully feeling it for a moment, Zhu Zhuqing was a little scared. Since her sister got what she wanted, she should still sleep in her sister's room. Woo-woo-woo. As soon as she entered the room, Zhu Zhuqing heard a whimper. On the sofa in the living room, a woman who looked 70% similar to Zhu Zhuqing was tied up with a rope like a caterpillar, surging on the sofa. Zhu Zhuqing saw her sister and tears fell. Zhu Zhuqing quickly untied the rope on Zhu Zhuqing. What happened to you? Zhu Zhuqing cried, I don't know. I just went out and was knocked unconscious. I didn't even see what she looked like. Woo-woo-woo, someone intercepted her, right? Zhu Zhuqing nodded with a stiff expression. No wonder the battle was so fierce. It turned out that the person inside was not her sister. Zhu Zhuqing said bitterly, that bastard actually intercepted my beard. No, good sister, come with me to catch the adulterer. I want to see who is bullying people like this. Zhu Zhuqing held Zhu Zhuqing down, shook her head slightly, and said, it's better not to go. Now there, if you are dragged by them, someone will die. Zhu Zhuqing's eyes flashed with fear. Is that really a person? And Zhu Qinghe's room was not far from Liu Chang'an. She was just strengthening Liana's faith and offering to lend a helping hand when the floor began to shake slightly. Then, there was a faint shouting sound. Zhu Qinghe was slightly startled and did not react. Although she had been punished many times, she still lacked intuition when it came to reality. What is this? Liana had a strange look on her face and said, Sisters, don't you even understand this? Liana clapped her hands and blinked. Zhu Qinghe finally reacted and her face changed drastically. The only person who dared to make trouble in the tavern was probably the boss, and there were only a handful of women who could make such a big noise with the boss and liked the boss. No matter how you think about it, the probability of it being Bibi Dong is very high. No. I have to go and see. Zhu Qinghe was horrified and ran out of the room without saying anything. Chapter 214 Who stole Zhu Zhuqing's meat? Bang, bang, bang. Zhu Qinghe knocked on Bibi Dong's door like crazy. The sound and the clapping sounds in the corridor came one after another, making Zhu Qinghe's face look extremely bad. Why didn't she open the door? Could it be that Bibi Dong was really in the room? Zhu Qinghe was panicked. She didn't want to step further. She didn't even care about her own image. Who cares whether her identity is exposed or not? Her mother is going to let others. Liana caught up with her. Seeing Zhu Qinghe so impatient and weird, she also thought of that possibility. The most important thing is that the occasional crying sound of a woman in the corridor can only be heard vaguely as a royal sister's voice. As for the timbre, they can't tell it. Is it Bibi Dong? As everyone knows, the sound made at the time is different from the original sound quality. Squeak, the door opened, and a short-haired lady appeared. Ling Yuan yawned and said helplessly, "What is Emperor Qinghe going to do? Harassing a decent woman?" Zhu Qinghe didn't care about joking, and hurriedly said, "Where is Bibi Dong? Let her come out. I want to see her." "The Pope is not here." Ling Yuan shook his head. Zhu Qinghe's face turned pale in an instant, and she stared at Ling Yuan in a daze. After a long while, she pointed to the room where the sound came from and said, "Then, she went to." Ling Yuan thought about it and shook his head. "I don't know, how could you tell me? However, if it is really related to the boss, then are we in hall?" Ling Yuan showed an interested look and was eager to try. Zhu Qinghe gritted her teeth and turned her head to catch the adultery. Even if the two were entangled, she would pull them apart. Anyway, she is not a simple little girl now. She has watched so many movies and has become numb. "Dear sister, please help me, I've been bullied." The meat that was about to reach my mouth was snatched away by someone. Zhu Zhuqing held Zhu Zhuqing tightly, curled up in her arms, resting her head on her chest. Tears kept flowing down, and even wet Zhu Zhuqing's clothes. Zhu Zhuqing looked helpless, and she didn't know what to say now. Zhu Zhuqing had been thinking about this for so long, and she finally gave him a chance, but in the end, someone snatched it away. The earth-shaking sound coming now. Isn't this just rubbing salt into Zhu Zhuqing's wound? "Good sister, you must help me." Zhu Zhuqing looked at Zhu Zhuqing with red eyes, looking pitiful. Zhu Zhuqing's mouth twitched, and said, "How else can I help you? I can't eat the piece of meat that others eat. Good sister, give me another chance, and we can eat it together." "I don't believe that there are still people who dare to do this." Zhu Zhuqing gritted her teeth and said, This isn't your first time." Zhu Zhuqing was slightly startled. How could a woman be willing to share a man with someone else for the first time? Zhu Zhuqing said anxiously, "What nonsense are you talking about? Of course I am still pure, but I don't want to wait any longer." "Well, okay, then come with me now, we can see who did it." Zhu Zhuqing thought about it and felt ashamed. She had only intended to take in her sister, but suddenly another woman was inserted. In this way, she went from having Liu Chang'an exclusively to having 1/3 of him. How could you be happy? Okay. Let's go together," Zhu Zhuqing said bitterly. In Tang San's room, Yu Xiaogang and Tang San are together. "Ah!" A high-pitched scream suddenly came from outside the door. The voice was too gentle and sharp. For a moment, no one could tell who she was. Asshole! Asshole! It must be that bitch Liu Long. She abandoned me. She really wants to climb up the social ladder. After challenging the rejuvenating pill, she can't wait to climb into the bed of the tavern owner. Bitch! Bitch! Yu Xiaogang roared crazily, his face flushed and his neck thick, but his body was like dead water and couldn't move. Tang San looked sad and said, "Teacher, don't get excited, you are not sure if it is Aunt Liu Long, don't even think about it. It must be that bitch." Yu Xiaogang roared. Yu Xiaogang's face showed hysterical madness. He said, "That's it. That's it. That bitch kept saying she loved me, but she turned around and climbed into someone else's bed. She cheated on me." Yu Xiaogang suddenly coughed dryly, and with a wow, he spit out a large mouthful of blood. "Teacher." Tang San hurriedly fetched water for Yu Xiaogang to wash his face and fed him medicine. Looking at Yu Xiaogang's half-human appearance, Tang San's eyes were full of heartache. Why did all the sufferings befall them, the master and the apprentice? Tang San stroked Yu Xiaogang's chest and said, "Teacher, when I challenge you next time, if I succeed, I will give you the wine that can help you recover." "No." Tang San. "Promise me that from now on, you will not enjoy any benefits from this tavern. Promise me." Yu Xiaogang stared at Tang San's face with a burning gaze. Tang San's face stiffened. How could he not know that the tavern can improve his soul power? With his character, he even has a great chance of becoming a god. But the teacher did not let him have anything to do with the tavern. Yu Xiaogang continued, "What you get from the tavern is not yours after all. You can only become a god by perfecting yourself and strengthening your foundation, not by relying on charity." Yu Xiaogang's words were righteous, but in fact, he just didn't want Tang San to have anything to do with the tavern, which would affect his reputation. Tang San was silent for a moment, looking at Yu Xiaogang's burning gaze. He gritted his teeth and said, "I understand, teacher. I listened to you. From now on, I will never challenge the worldly wine again, and I will never drink the wine in the tavern again. Good boy, you are really my good boy." Yu Xiaogang smiled with relief, and his ambitions rose in his heart. Without the assistance of the tavern, relying entirely on himself, without the intervention of anyone, he can still cultivate a god. At the door of Liu Chang'an's room, the shouting has disappeared, and the floor is no longer shaking. The Zhu sisters and Zhu Zhuqing and Douluo are gathered at the door. Seeing Liana, Zhu Zhuqing's face changed, and she thought of something. Is the bitch inside Bibi Dong? Liana frowned and said coldly, "Speak politely." "Polite? You want me to be polite? Why don't you let the bitch inside be polite? Obviously tonight is my chance, but that bitch knocked me out," Zhu Zhuqing said fiercely. Liana's face was stunned. Could it really be her teacher? In that case, she was really unreasonable. Besides, the master's children were older than hers, so why was he competing with her for a man? Zhu Zhuqing said coldly, "Zhu Zhuqing, please be polite. You are the daughter of a Xingluo noble family, but you actually speak dirty words. You're on their side too? Okay, let's stop talking nonsense and go in directly." Zhu Zhuqing pulled Liana and rushed into the room. Chapter 215. Pitting the Apprentice. Bang. The door opened and 4 women rushed in. Liana said angrily, "Don't pull me. I don't want to follow you." Liana didn't stand it and was dragged into Liu Chang'an's bedroom by Zhu Zhuqing. In the bedroom, there was only Liu Chang'an, who had just finished a shower. Water drops flowed on the lines and grooves of his body. His body could only be described as perfect. Liu Chang'an glanced at the 4 women and raised his eyebrows slightly. He really didn't pay attention to the movement outside. Although he was omniscient and omnipotent, he would not keep it on all the time. As long as it didn't harm him or the tavern, he wouldn't ruin his mood. Think about it, the woman who is fighting with you is like an X-ray image in your eyes, or billions of pores on her body, and you don't know what she is thinking in her heart, and you can hear it. Who can accept it? Don't look at me stupidly. Zhu Zhuqing shook her head and looked helplessly at the 3 women who were stunned on the spot. The 3 women now acted in tacit understanding, staring at Liu Chang'an blankly, their eyes almost green, like wolves. Tick, 2 streams of blood flowed out of Zhu Zhuqing's nose, and the blood dripped onto the ground. There was a lot of yellow garbage in her mind, and now she was looking at Liu Chang'an and himself. Now that the fantasy had come into reality, she seemed to have all kinds of erotic scenes in front of her. For example, Liu Chang'an forcefully took her away. Thinking of this, if she gave her body to Liu Chang'an, wouldn't it be possible to cut off Bibi Dong's idea of finding a stepfather for her? Liana bit her lower lip and shook her butt gently. Seeing Zhu Zhuqing's embarrassment, she immediately covered her nose. As soon as she put it on, her hands became wet. It was over, and her face was also covered with blood. Zhu Zhuqing's eyes immediately turned red. This piece of meat was obviously hers. She hadn't eaten it yet. No matter what, Zhu Zhuqing rushed to Liu Chang'an like a hungry tiger, sliding on her knees and biting the meat she had been thinking about. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Zhu Zhuqing and the other 2 girls were all stunned. "No way, sister, are you so brave?" Liu Chang'an was also stunned. Was it because he couldn't hold the knife anymore? How dare these women do that? Zhu Zhuqing said, "Boss, just take her." Zhu Zhuqing also wanted to help her sister, so she pulled Liana and Zhu Zhuqing head out of the room. 2 blood marks were left along the way. Really useless, Zhu Zhuqing thought so, while looking at Zhu Zhuqing with a chill. This man actually had a nosebleed. Zhu Zhuqing and Liana didn't catch the wild woman. Zhu Zhuqing went back to find Bibi Dong. Liana pulled her and tried to dissuade her. Some things are hard to be clear about. Zhu Zhuqing insisted on finding out, and knocked on Bibi Dong's door again. It was Ling Yuan Luo who came out and told them that Bibi Dong hadn't come back since she went out. Then where did she go? Zhu Zhuqing was puzzled. Liana breathed a sigh of relief. She was just an ostrich now. Now that she didn't know if the person in the room was Bibi Dong, she could pretend not to know and continue to hook up with Liu Chang'an. The question is, where did Bibi Dong go? Outside the tavern, in a hotel invested by the 7 Treasures glazed tile sect, Bibi Dong met a man and a woman alone. Liu Chang'an smiled and said, "Looking at you, it seems that we are here at the wrong time." Bibi Dong snorted coldly, looked at another man in a black cloak, and said, "Just say what you want to say. If you want to harm the tavern, I can't do anything for you." Liu Chang'an smiled and said to the man next to him, "See, King of Destruction, I'm extremely loyal to the tavern owner." The god of destruction looked calm, looked at Bibi Dong indifferently, and said, "I just want to understand the situation of the goddess of life from you. Have they been bullied in the tavern?" Bibi Dong shook her head and said, "Who do you think the boss is?" Bibi Dong seemed to be proud of it and continued, the boss will not deliberately humiliate them. Although they are employees of the tavern, it can be seen that they like their current life very much. Others only respect them. The god of destruction nodded slightly and said, that's good. He came to the lower world this time not to fight the tavern to the death, but simply to think about the goddess of life. He is crazy, but not stupid, and listens to the goddess of life. Liu God smiled and said, Bibi Dong, have you climbed into the bed of the tavern owner? Bibi Dong blushed and said unhappily, don't worry about my business. Instead, have you found the reincarnation of Xiao God? Ha ha, I'm not like you. I'm Xiao God's mother now. Liu God said proudly. Bibi Dong and the god of destruction were quite speechless. Poor Xiao God, what a mess he must have been made of by Liu God in these 100 reincarnations. Yu Xiaogang insisted not to take advantage of the tavern, but how could Tang San bear to see his teacher become a useless person? Now that the Yoshin sect has not recovered, and has a deep prejudice against Yu Xiaogang, he can't borrow help, so he can only ask his brothers for help. Now that Shriek Academy is in name only, he can only ask Flanders, Xiao Wu and Oscar for help. He knelt down directly, hoping that after they successfully challenge the earthly wine, they would choose the wine that can heal Yu Xiaogang's injuries. Fortunately, there is still friendship between them. All three of them agreed. Then, Tang San knocked on Xiao's door again. Knock, knock, knock. Entering the room, Tang San looked at Xiao, who looked even more beautiful after not seeing her for a few months, with a complicated look in his eyes. Although he didn't say it clearly, Xiao's attitude towards him was alienated. Tang San was very sad, but he didn't show it because he found his father and had a family. Now seeing Xiao, it's inevitable that he felt something again. Xiao, you've changed a lot, Tang San smiled bigly. Brother, Xiao hesitated for a moment, saw Tang San's embarrassment, and couldn't bear to irritate him. Hearing this call, Tang San's mood was indeed relieved a lot. Tang San wiped his face, tears brushed across his cheeks, and he began to tell the story of Yu Xiaogang. After hearing this, Xiao was moved and said, Brother, this is too unfair to you. How could the master do that? Tang San smiled bitterly and said, he is my teacher. Xiao, you know, I can't do anything to betray my teacher and ancestors. Besides, I don't like the tavern. My father went crazy here. Xiao sighed. Although they have pure intentions, they are beaten by various realities and will eventually become helpless. Brother, is there anything I can do for you? Tang San said, tomorrow, Dean Flanders may challenge the worldly wine. If they succeed, they will choose the wine that can restore the teacher. I have asked many people, but I still want to see if you, Xiao, can do it. Xiao bit her lip and said helplessly, I am willing to help brother, but I am not an employee of the tavern. And Da Meng and Erming's drinks can only be drunk by themselves, I'll try my best. Xiao sighed. Chapter 216 The God of Destruction arrives. The next day, the tavern opened. People came down from the second floor guest rooms one after another, most of them were not in good spirits. Last night, a woman and Liu Chang'an had a fierce fight, making too much noise and being too seductive, which seriously affected their sleep quality. Having said that, no one dared to complain to Liu Chang'an. Yu Xiaogang was carried down by Tang San. At this time, there were already quite a few people sitting in the tavern. As soon as they went down the stairs, they saw Liu Wolong, who was full of joy. Liu Wolong successfully challenged the rejuvenating pill yesterday. After taking it, all the haggardness of these days disappeared, as if she was nourished. Of course, the most important thing is that her mentality has changed. She is no longer obsessed with Yu Xiaogang. Seeing Yu Xiaogang again, there was no other emotion in her eyes, and she smiled naturally. Xiaogang, you, bitch. Bitch. You still have the face to see me? How dare you call my name? What did you do last night? With this expression now, you want to break up with me completely, right? Get out. Get out of my sight. Yu Xiaogang said angrily. Liu Wolong was stunned for a moment. She just said hello to Yu Xiaogang, but she was insulted like that. You know, in the past, she was the woman who was hurt the most by Yu Xiaogang. Later, she helped Yu Xiaogang challenge the mortal wine, and was punished to the point that she even lost her soul power. As a result, why did Yu Xiaogang call her now? Bitch. Liu Wolong's face changed. I am such a bitch. Why did I fall for a waste like you in the first place? Fortunately, it's not too late now. I can still continue to find a man, and you, hehe, I'm afraid no woman can be interested in you. Liu Wolong retorted, making Yu Xiaogang's face purple with anger. He opened his mouth wide and couldn't say a word. Tang San hurriedly stroked Zhu Zhuqing's chest to calm him down, and said softly, "Teacher, don't argue with them. Just do good things." How can they understand the teacher's greatness? Zhu Zhuqing snorted coldly, and recovered his spirits, saying, "Bitch. Shozan, remember, the more beautiful a woman is, the lower she is. You must not indulge in women, gay." At this time, Ermin came over and picked up Tang San and Zhu Zhuqing. "Senior Ermin," Tang San exclaimed. Ermin rolled his eyes and said, "You are making a lot of noise in the tavern. Do you think the tavern is your home? Go outside and reflect on yourself. Come back tomorrow." Ermin threw Zhu Zhuqing and his apprentice out of the tavern like a chicken. Ha ha ha! A burst of laughter immediately broke out in the tavern. Now their malice towards Zhu Zhuqing is not small. Who let Zhu Zhuqing use the formula of the worldly wine as an excuse to show off, making them wait in vain? In the cheerful atmosphere, Flanders looked bitter and sighed. Liu Chang'an said coldly, "Why are you sighing? That bastard asked for it. He actually scolded me like that. Boss Fu, don't challenge him to the earthly wine. Women hold grudges, especially those whose relationships have broken down." Liu Chang'an stared at Flanders coldly. She thought to herself that if Flanders would listen to her, maybe the two of them could try dating. After decades of relationship, how could she not know Flanders' thoughts? Flanders gritted his teeth, looked at Liu Chang'an and smiled bigly. "Erlong, after all, the three of us brothers and sisters have been friends for so many years. How can I watch him become a useless person?" Hilly. Liu Chang'an hugged her shoulders, turned around, and no longer paid attention to Flanders, and completely gave up giving Flanders a chance. A woman and a brother actually chose a brother like Zhu Zhuqing, so he is not worthy of being a lover. Flanders didn't know what he had lost by this choice. He nervously found the maid Shuishan next to him and said, "Hello, I want to challenge the earthly wine." After paying the money, he drank the earthly wine before attracting too much attention. "Gong gong," Flanders chanted in his heart, "Let Xiaogan recover, Xiaogan recover." When he chanted the fourth time, he felt straight drunk. Xiao Wu came over and picked up Flanders and carried him to the second floor. At this time, Oscar also gritted his teeth and asked the maid to challenge the world wine. His wish was to change a powerful martial soul, because he already knew that Nine Rong would never marry a supporting spirit master. But, he failed. Without much common experience, it was only love at first sight, so it was difficult to succeed in the challenge. As soon as Xiao Wu came down, he saw Oscar also fell to the ground, and his face immediately showed an irritable mood. Helping Oscar up, Xiao Wu muttered, "This Tang San can really give us a problem. I don't have any wishes now, right? Isn't it obvious that I will lose?" At this time, there was a sudden noise at the door of the tavern. Everyone was attracted and looked around. A man in a black robe entered. No one could see his face clearly, but the breath he exuded made everyone guess his identity immediately. God. Another god has come to the tavern. However, the crowd was more interested in watching the fun, without much fear or awe. Who made the maids in the tavern all gods? Liu Chang'an didn't need to watch. With his current strength, he already knew the god of destruction came to Great Star last night, but he didn't come out to contact him. With his current ability, he can suppress the god of destruction in an instant in the tavern. Outside, although he can't kill him instantly, he can undoubtedly suppress the god of destruction. Now that the god of destruction has come to the tavern, if he honestly challenges the worldly wine, he welcomes him, but if he wants to make trouble, he can suppress him with a flip of his hand. The goddess of life saw the god of destruction coming in and smiled apologetically at the customer she was serving. Xiaozi. The goddess of life walked up quickly and shook the god of destruction's hand. The god of destruction looked up and down at the goddess of life for a few times, and when he saw that there was no sign of punishment on her body, he showed a stiff smile on his face. "Xiao Lu, I'm relieved to see that you are okay." The goddess of life hugged the god of destruction and whispered in his ear. The god of destruction nodded slightly and looked up at Liu Chang'an. "Xiaozi, Xiao Lu, hehe, Abai, their names are very similar to ours. They are still god kings, but their names are very ordinary." Ziji pushed Baiji's waist and said with a smile. Baiji said helplessly, "Zi, don't make fun of other people's names. That's an enemy, why bother about him? Besides, I have a baby in my belly now, who dares to bully me?" Ziji stroked her flat belly with a smug look on her face. Baiji looked at her helplessly and muttered softly, "How can you get pregnant in one go, and your species, Abai, you may not know the ability of our dragon clan. Take out Dragon God, his 9 wives are also other species, didn't they still give birth to dragon sons? Just wait and see. When the time comes, let the child call you godmother. Ziji put her arm around Baiji's shoulders and chuckled. Chapter 217 Bet Boss, I want to exchange for the little goddess of life. I can make a deal with you. The god of destruction let go of the goddess of life and immediately said to Liu Chang'an. Now the tavern was silent, and everyone was looking at them. Liu Chang'an raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh? You want to make a deal with me? Yes, sure. A god and goddess of life have hindered the business of the tavern and offended you. It is normal for you to punish them, but you can also ask for compensation instead of punishment. The god of destruction said. Liu Chang'an thought about it and shook his head and said, to be honest, I don't think the tavern is lacking anything, and my punishment on them is also to appease my mood. I don't think there is anything that can replace it. 3 first-level god positions. With them, you can make 3 people become gods. The god of destruction suddenly said. The god of destruction stretched out a hand, and 3 balls of light flew out from the palm of his hand one by one, emitting a sacred and noble aura. These 3 god positions are all first-level gods. How about I exchange their freedom with you? The god of destruction asked. God position. Once you have a god position, breaking through the 100 level to become a god at level 99 will be a piece of cake. This is definitely the highest treasure in the Soul Master world. What kind of 100,000-year soul ring is it? It's probably not even worthy of carrying shoes. Many people's eyes turned green when they saw these 3 light balls. Bone Luo breathed heavily and said to Nine Feng Zi, Chengxing, that guy has not inherited the god position yet. If he can get one, he will definitely become a god in the future. Liu Chang'an smiled and raised a hand. You said, this kind of thing, I can make it at will. As soon as the voice fell, a starry sky suddenly appeared above the tavern, with stars. The mysterious and deep light flickered. And each little star is actually a manifestation of a god position. The aura they exude is exactly the same as that summoned by the god of destruction, and even in terms of quality, many of them are even better. In comparison, the god of destruction is like comparing the light of a firefly with the sun and the moon. And the people in the tavern have been completely dazed, and they can hardly think. There must be tens of thousands of god positions above the entire tavern. In other words, as long as Liu Chang'an wants, he can completely create this number of gods. In other words, it is entirely possible for them to challenge the mortal wine and become gods in one step. Now that it is clearly shown, everyone's eyes are red. The women looked at Zhu Zhuqing and others with envy and jealousy. With Liu Chang'an's generosity, it is entirely possible that he would give them the throne of God. After all, the supreme treasure in the eyes of the mortal world may be like a grain of rice to Liu Chang'an. Just like would they care about a copper soul coin? They don't feel bad if they give it to them casually. This is what the throne of God means to Liu Chang'an. The face of the god of destruction darkened. When he saw Liu Chang'an's move, he understood that any deal was a joke. He thought the deal was very generous, but in fact, it was just a small amount for Liu Chang'an. The god of destruction took a deep breath and said slowly, Boss, since the deal cannot be reached, then, I challenge the earthly wine. If I succeed, can I let them leave? Liu Chang'an nodded and said, of course you can. All wishes can be realized in the earthly wine. I understand, I want a challenge, the god of destruction spoke decisively. Shut up. Destruction, don't be impulsive. The power of earthly wine cannot be resisted by divine power. Among the gods who can challenge successfully, only Rakshasa god succeeded once. The god of the sea held the arm of the god of destruction and said seriously. The god of destruction said calmly, if it depends on the will of the heart, then no one can stop me from letting Xiao Wu go free now. The god of the sea shook his head and said, I believe you have the determination. But the scenes of the earthly wine challenge are complicated and changeable. It's really not that easy. And if you fail, the punishment is also random. If your divine power is weakened, what will happen to the god realm? The god of the sea stared at the eyes of the god of destruction and said in a deep voice, Destruction, the overall situation of the god realm is the most important. The corners of the god of destruction's mouth twitched fiercely, and he suppressed his anger and said coldly, You still have the face to say. If there weren't too many gods like you who wanted to give up, how could the god realm be like this? The god of the sea was embarrassed. It was indeed because they always wanted to find the inheritor and then leave the god realm to play, which weakened the power of the god realm. Now the burden is almost all on the shoulders of the god of destruction. The god of destruction wanted to save his wife, but he stopped him and asked the other party to worry about the god realm. Isn't this bullying an honest man? The goddess of life came to the rescue. She patted the back of the hand of the god of destruction and said with a smile, Xiao, now you are almost the only one in charge of the god realm committee. Your strength cannot become weaker, otherwise. The goddess of life hesitated and glanced in the direction of Giyuena. Among the beast gods of Douluo Star now, there is Giyuena, an Inge of God King, and Daitian, a first-level god. If they really want to make trouble in the god realm, it will be a hidden danger. The god of destruction took a deep breath. Okay, but Xiao can come to see me often. Xiao, do you know? Being a maid in a tavern is actually quite interesting. Watching the various aspects of the world, there are many more fireworks than in the god realm. I don't think this is suffering, and it's not that I can't see you. So, let me get through this punishment safely. This can be regarded as my atonement. The goddess of life smiled at the god of destruction. The god of destruction had a complicated expression and sighed, forget it, since you said so, what can I do? The god of destruction lowered his head and was silent for a moment, and suddenly an idea flashed in his mind. Boss, can Xiao Wu go back home normally? Hearing this question, Liu Chang'an was a little embarrassed. There is no vacation at the moment. He seemed to have become a black-hearted boss. The god of destruction said, Boss, how about we make a bet? If I win, you'll let the tavern branch open in the god realm, and let Xiao Wu go to the god realm to run that branch. If I lose, the tavern will also open in the god realm, and I am the 7 deadly sins under my command will also work for the tavern for free. How about it? The god of destruction stared at Liu Chang'an with burning eyes. Hearing about the bet, Liu Chang'an thought about it. In fact, opening a tavern in the god realm would only benefit him no matter he won or lost. He smiled and said, it's interesting. How do you want to bet? We each select people of equal strength, from weak to strong, and we train them separately, and then let them compete on the ring. The god of destruction explained. Liu Chang'an looked around, and almost everyone in the tavern had 3 words written on their faces, I do. Yes, whether it was the tavern owner or the god of destruction, it was a lifetime opportunity to get their guidance. Okay. Liu Chang'an said with a smile. Chapter 218. Team Selection. Okay. When Liu Chang'an's voice fell, everyone in the tavern almost went crazy. They didn't dare to cheer loudly, for fear that Liu Chang'an would change his mind. So, they all looked at each other, expressing their joy with their eyes that were almost popping out. For a moment, everyone in the tavern was shaking their heads like a rattle. How could they not be happy? Whether it was the tavern owner or the god of destruction, the god king of the god realm, it would be a great opportunity to get the teachings of any of them. It might even change the fate of a lifetime. Even titled Douluo such as Bone Douluo and Poison Douluo couldn't stay calm. Bone Douluo sent a message to Nine Fengzi, his voice trembling. Fengzi, if you can be selected, it is estimated that the road to becoming a god will be smoother. After all, if you want to win, you'll definitely invest. Nine Fengzi nodded slightly, with a complicated expression, and said, I hope Uncle Gi can be selected. The candidates for titled Douluo are very limited in the tavern. Yes. Bone Douluo clenched his fists. He hadn't been so nervous for decades. Similar to him, other titled Douluo also have similar emotions. After all, there are only dozens of titled Douluo in the mainland, not even 50. The probability of each person being selected is still very high. Poison Douluo pinched his fingers, quickly approached Duguyan, rubbed his granddaughter's head, and forced a smile. Good granddaughter, if you can speak, you must recommend Grandpa to the boss, and Grandpa will definitely listen to the boss. Duguyan said helplessly. Grandpa, I'm a little transparent in the tavern. Duguyan's tone was sour, because before work today, Liu Chang'an said that the vacant maid position in the tavern would be filled by Zhu Zhuqing. Thinking of the movement last night, it was guessed that the other party had eaten meat. It would be strange if she could be happy. Poison Douluo smiled and said, just do your best, just do your best. The Wuhan hall was very lively. Chrysanthemum Douluo, Ghost Douluo, Spirit Kite Douluo and others surrounded Bibi Dong, looking at Bibi Dong eagerly, and their thoughts were self-evident. Bibi Dong rolled her eyes at them and said unhappily, do you expect me to have a say? The boss has already given me a reward. The titled Douluo smiled awkwardly, with suspicion flashing in their eyes. Gave a reward. Was it last night? Thinking of this, the people in the spirit hall straightened their backs even more. They were originally the first Soul Master Force. Now the Pope has climbed into the boss's bed. Which force dares to provoke the spirit hall? Then we will choose from the 5 levels of Soul Master, Soul Sect, Soul King, Soul Saint, and titled Luo. One-on-one elimination system, which side loses all the people? Liu Chang'an said with a smile. Okay. The god of destruction nodded repeatedly. Whether he wins or loses, he can achieve his goal. This bet is more to make Liu Chang'an happy. That's right, even if they're the god kings of the god realm, they have to think of ways to make Liu Chang'an happy, and then Liu Chang'an will allow them to be happy. As for choosing people, please see, starting with Soul Master, I choose Zhu Zhuqing, and His Excellency the God of Destruction. You can choose from them. Liu Chang'an waved his hand, and suddenly a series of human faces appeared in the sky above the tavern. They moved quickly, all of them were Soul Masters in Douluo Continent. The huge amount of information, even the God of Destruction would have to spend a lot of spiritual consciousness to read it. Suddenly, the pupils of the God of Destruction shrank, and he immediately said, "Boss, can you let the 2 people who were just thrown out come in? I want to ask their opinions." "Of course you can, Erming," Liu Chang'an ordered. Erming went out to find Tang San and Yu Xiaogan. Seeing this, most people sighed. The boss actually chose the maid, and the candidates after that are probably related to the tavern. After all, the fat water does not flow to the fields of outsiders. But in this way, their already slim probability will be reduced by half again. Xiao showed a happy smile on her face. After talking with Tang San last night, she felt more pity for Tang San. Now that she saw that Tang San's fortune had come, she was happy for Tang San. At this time, Tang San carried Yu Xiaogan on his back and followed Ermin into the tavern. Tang San still had a puzzled look on his face, and it was obvious that Ermin did not tell him the reason for bringing him in. The God of Destruction looked at Tang San, nodded slightly, and a rare smile appeared on his stiff face, saying, "Young man, I'm the God of Destruction, and I just made a bet with the boss. Are you willing to join my team?" After hearing this, Tang San's face showed surprise. Being instructed by the God King for a period of time. And in order to win, can the God King not strengthen Tang San's strength? This is simply pie in the sky. Tang San opened his mouth wide and was about to reply, but Yu Xiaogan on his back spoke first. "I'm sorry, Lord God King, Xiao San is my disciple and will not participate in this bet. Without the participation of gods, he can still become a god. I hope he can find someone else." Yu Xiaogan sneered secretly. If Tang San agreed, who would give him the credit when he became a god? The God of Destruction frowned, ignored Yu Xiaogan, looked at Tang San, and said, "You should know the fate of this, right?" "Xiao San," Yu Xiaogan said lightly. Tang San struggled for a while, and said dejectedly, I give up." "Sorry, Lord God King." With so many people watching, Tang San didn't want to be known as disrespectful to his teacher. "Fuck. Yu Xiaogan. Fuck you. I must break your legs." An angry voice sounded, and Tang Xiao from the Ocean sect rolled up his sleeves and rushed over. There were also several Ocean sect spirit masters who were furious and followed Tang Xiao to rush over here. Yu Xiaogan was really too irritating. Tang San's learning from the God King was a great benefit to Tang San and the Ocean sect. But it was ruined by Yu Xiaogan. Who can tolerate this? Yu Xiaogan hurriedly shouted, "Tavern. Tavern rules. Stop. Get out." Ermin shouted impatiently, but glared at Yu Xiaogan fiercely. This man was too disgusting. "Xiao San. Don't be loyal. Yu Xiaogan, that clown, is not worthy of being your teacher." Tang Xiao and others left the tavern unwillingly, and shouted when they left the door. Tang San closed his eyes in pain, as if he was isolated from the outside world. He had a vague feeling that something seemed to have left his body. Yu Xiaogan continued on his back. "Xiao San, your future is brighter. They don't understand, but you should know that with the teacher's teachings and your natural resilience, you'll definitely succeed." Xiao bit her lip and shook her head helplessly. Looking at this scene, Liu Chang'an's mouth twitched slightly. He didn't expect Yu Xiaogan to be so powerful that he actually destroyed most of Tang San's great luck. From the Son of Destiny, he directly became the fate of an ordinary titled Luo. This time, it is really impossible to become a god in the future. Chapter 219 continue. Forget it, your name is Nine Wrong, right? Little girl, are you willing to be my team member? The God of Destruction shook his head helplessly. Sometimes, it is a great loss to miss the opportunity in front of you. Nine Wrong was stunned for a moment, pointing at herself, with an incredible expression on her face. A probability of 1 in tens of thousands fell on her. She is an auxiliary spirit master. What role can she play? The god of destruction would not have made a wrong choice, right? Nine Feng's face showed ecstasy, and he hurriedly said, yes. Lord God King, I am willing to be your team member. Wrong, please agree quickly, don't waste Lord God King's time. Nine Fengzi grabbed Nine Wrong's shoulders and subconsciously used great strength. Nine Wrong gasped in pain and nodded repeatedly, yes, I'm willing, Dad. You pinched me. I'm sorry, Wrong, Dad is too happy, ha. Good Wrong, go to Lord God King quickly. Listen to Lord God King's teachings carefully. Nine Fengzi was almost incoherent. Nine Fengzi, the leader of the three sects, who was always famous for his calmness, can't calm down now. Nine Wrong raised her head, enjoying the envious and jealous eyes from all sides, and walked quickly to the side of the god of destruction. When she passed Zhu Zhuqing, she snorted, I will definitely defeat you. Boring. Zhu Zhuqing had no expression on her face. After a pause, Liu Chang'an continued, for that choice of the soul sect, I want Zhu Zhuqing. Your Excellency the god of destruction, please. The god of destruction released his divine thoughts again, collecting the information of all the soul sects on the continent provided by Liu Chang'an. He looked at Xuebinja and said, Xuebinja, are you willing to join my team? Xuebinja was dejected because she was depressed because Liu Chang'an didn't choose her. Hearing the invitation of the god of destruction, her depressed mood was relieved a little. She nodded slightly, I'm willing, but I don't want to affect the performance of the tavern. Xiao Wu and others' faces turned green when they heard this. It's already this time, sister, Captain, why are you still thinking about that performance? You were going to be rich. However, Xuebinja's mind was now full of the disappointment that Liu Chang'an did not choose her. Hearing that it was related to the tavern, the god of destruction was very tolerant and smiled, don't worry, it won't affect your performance. Thank you. Xuebinja walked slowly behind the god of destruction. The tavern was silent. Seeing Xuebinja's reaction, most of them were in disbelief and rubbed their eyes hard, but what they saw did not change at all. Is there really someone who was invited by the God King without showing joy? Is she stupid? Did you see it? My dear sister, this woman is obviously thinking about Chang'an. Zhu Zhuqing took her sister's hand and said with a pout. Zhu Zhuqing looked helplessly at her sister who was floating because of having sex with Liu Chang'an, and said, don't forget, you are now a maid in the tavern, you have to call the boss. Hypocritical, I have asked, you are really open-minded, you often call me Dad in private, right? Zhu Zhuqing joked. Zhu Zhuqing couldn't stand her anymore and left quickly. Can private words be told to others? Soul King's words. Liu Chang'an frowned slightly, and turned his gaze to Elena, but did not make a choice immediately. Because of the intervention of the tavern, all members of the Golden Generation have broken through to the Soul King. Seeing Liu Chang'an's gaze, Elena was immediately ecstatic, put her hands together in front of her chest, and began to pray. Liu Chang'an slowly looked away. Elena is now a Soul King of level 54, which is not too outstanding among all the Soul Kings, and the other party has feelings for him. If Elena is recruited, it might make the two kittens depressed. Seeing Liu Chang'an turn his eyes away, Elena's face turned pale instantly, with tears hanging from the corners of her eyes, and she was about to cry. Boss, please consider my disciple. Bibi Dong's almost coquettish tone suddenly sounded. She spoke to Liu Chang'an like this in public, which had already swept her dignity. Everyone looked at Bibi Dong and Liu Chang'an with different expressions. Zhu Qing's heart skipped a beat, and he gritted his teeth and prayed, with this tone, it couldn't have been her last night. I hope it wasn't. Sure enough, the Pope and the boss are definitely having an affair. The people in the spirit hall were determined. Liu Chang'an thought for a moment and said, let's go with Elena. When Elena heard this voice, she jumped up on the spot and screamed, great. Great. Boss, I will never let you down. Bibi Dong looked at Liu Chang'an with affection, but she didn't expect that the other party would really give her face. She was afraid that she really couldn't wait for 1,000 years. Should she reduce it by 100 years, or 200 years? The god of destruction quickly made a choice, pointing at the red-haired Yan, and said, Yan, are you willing to be my team member? Yan was stunned for a moment, but there was not much joy on his face. Instead, he looked at Liu Chang'an seriously and bowed, Boss, do you agree? Since helping the tavern last time, Yan and his family have publicly declared that they will be loyal to the tavern. Now, he is showing this one. Liu Chang'an smiled and said, okay. Yes. Yan bowed to the god of destruction again and said, "Thanks to the kindness of the Lord God King, I will do my best and will not let the boss down." The corner of the god of destruction's mouth twitched slightly. Why is this mortal boy so dramatic? Everyone in the tavern had an expression of eating a fly. This little bastard, using a chicken feather as a token of authority. When did the boss want to recruit you? How come this shameless energy? Did you learn it from Shanghai? Now more than half of the candidates have answers, and they only have 4 chances left. About Soul Saint, Liu Chang'an was also in trouble and pondered for a moment. "Boss, can I atone for my sins?" Liu Wolong suddenly stood up and recommended himself. From the beginning to now, it was the first person who dared to take the initiative to recommend himself to Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an didn't care about this candidate. He nodded and said, "Okay, if you in, I will lift your punishment." "Thank you, boss," Liu Wolong said in surprise. Seeing this scene, everyone regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. Why didn't they muster up the courage to recommend themselves to the boss? Yu Xiaogang stared at Liu Wolong with resentment, secretly saying, "Sure enough, this bitch climbed into Liu Chang'an's bed last night, otherwise why would he choose her? Now she is still pretending." The god of destruction chose Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu laughed loudly, not at all stage fright, and ran quickly behind that god of destruction with joy. Countless envious and jealous eyes shot over. For title duo, I choose Poison Duo. Liu Chang'an was very straightforward. Then I will choose Bone Duo. The god of destruction nodded. Nine Fengzi held the table and almost fainted with surprise. 2 people from the 7 Treasures Glazed sect were actually selected. Bone Duo also walked over lightly. The limit is 7 days, and the competition is here. Don't give them anything that exceeds the limit of the big level. Liu Chang'an added the rules. The god of destruction naturally agreed to all of them. Then, under the envious gaze of everyone, he left the tavern with 5 team members. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 220 Tang San destroys himself. After the god of destruction left, the tavern became lively again. Everyone in the tavern was discussing the competition in 7 days. On one side was the tavern owner, and on the other side was the highest god king in the Douluo world. In terms of personal strength, Liu Chang'an was undoubtedly the strongest, but in terms of coaching the team members, the boss will definitely win. Think about it, as long as the boss gives us something, it will be enough for us to benefit all living beings. Not necessarily, the boss has always given gifts to those who succeeded in that challenge of the mortal world wine. Moreover, the boss is not a person who cares about the reputation of being a person. He must be participating for fun, while the god of destruction wants to see his wife. The boss is invincible, but it doesn't mean he will teach. Just wait and see. A group of people talked a lot, and their tone could not hide their sourness. When they saw Zhu Zhuqing and other lucky people, the envy and jealousy on their faces were almost overflowing. It is better to open up than to block. There are also people who watch the fun, such as Tang San. Obviously, he was chosen by the god of destruction. As long as he performs well, he may even have the opportunity to become a god. As a result, it was ruined by Yu Xiaogang. If it were them, let alone teachers, even if they were biological parents, they would not be able to stop them from being taught by the God King. Young people nowadays are ignorant and will regret it in the future. Tang San regretted it a little. If he had done psychological work on Yu Xiaogang first, he would have been able to join the God King team, which would be beneficial to his future. But he was too impulsive. Tang San carried Yu Xiaogang and left the tavern. He wanted to calm down outside and then find his father. Otherwise, if he stayed in the tavern, he would lose his balance sooner or later. Not long after leaving the tavern, a group of spirit masters from the Clear Sky sect surrounded them. Tang San looked at them and frowned. "What do you want to do?" "Tang San, it has nothing to do with you. Put this clown down. We have something to find him," Tang Long said coldly. Tang San asked in confusion, "What can you do?" Yu Xiaogang's face changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, "Xiao San, quickly return to the tavern. This group of people wants to harm the teacher." Yu Xiaogang's eyes were extremely flustered. Just based on what he did, it would not be surprising for the Ocean sect to kill him. Tang San was about to turn around, but he was blocked by the spirit masters of the Ocean sect from behind. They surrounded Tang San in the middle, all with unfriendly faces and clenched fists. Tang gritted his teeth and said, "This old waste, I have disliked him for a long time. What a thing, pretending to be very powerful, but in the end, he must be severely punished. This waste cannot be easily forgiven." The spirit masters of the Ocean sect were indignant. Since the Ocean sect came into being, it has hardly encountered any good things. Now Liu Chang'an has destroyed the opportunity to communicate with the god of destruction. "Don't!" Tang San just opened his mouth. A fist quickly enlarged in his eyes. He turned his head away, and the unlucky one was Liu Chang'an on his back. Bang! A punch hit Liu Chang'an's face fiercely. Liu Chang'an cried out in pain and flew out of Tang San's back. The others rushed forward and punched and kicked Liu Chang'an, who fell to the ground. "Oh, help, Xiao San, the teacher is going to be beaten to death." Liu Chang'an screamed for help. He was now paralyzed and only his head could move. He couldn't protect himself at all. He was soon beaten beyond recognition and looked bloody. Hearing the teacher's wailing, Tang San was anxious, but because of various things, his cultivation level was only level 31 now. How could he stop the spirit masters of the Ocean sect? Tang San wanted to rush into the crowd, but was quickly driven out by the spirit masters of the Ocean sect. Seeing Liu Chang'an being beaten up, Tang San was angry. He roared with a ferocious face and said, "Stop it. Is the tavern going to sit and watch?" Tang San's shouting had an effect. Ermin came to the door, and the spirit masters of the Ocean sect did not dare to beat Liu Chang'an anymore. Tang San rushed into the crowd, carrying the bruised Liu Chang'an on his back, with a look of self-blame on his face. "It's all my fault, teacher, I'm sorry, Xiao San." Liu Chang'an was dying. Tang San stared at everyone in the Ocean sect, his eyes bloodshot. He hated the Ocean sect so much now. If the Ocean sect hadn't been cowardly, how could his parents have ended up like that? Now he is actually taking his anger out on his teacher for the sake of the sect's honor. This is intolerable. Tang San, who was so hot-blooded, yelled, "The Ocean sect doesn't distinguish between right and wrong. It's cowardly and has no strength. It's unworthy at being the #1 sect in the world. From today on, I, Tang San, will quit the Ocean sect." Tang Long's face changed, realizing that he had made a mess. Tang was younger and more energetic. Hearing this, he retorted, "The blood on the bed-wetting body is from the Ocean sect. Your martial spirit, the Ocean Hammer, is also from the Ocean sect. You are where you are today, not because of your teacher, but because of the gift from the Ocean sect and the magic of the tavern." Tang San said angrily, "Without the Ocean Hammer and the tavern, I can still become stronger. In that case, I will give up your martial spirit. Ignore the gift from the tavern. Even if there is only ordinary blue silver grass, under the guidance of the teacher, I can still become a god at level 100. You watch me." After Tang San finished his hysterical roar, he turned around and ran into the tavern. The Ocean sect people were stunned for a moment, and Tang Long said in surprise, "Quick! Go and stop Tang San." The Ocean sect people woke up as if from a dream and ran into the tavern together. In the tavern, Tang San had asked a maid for 3 bowls of earthly wine, and drank them one after another. When the Ocean sect people arrived, it was already the 4th second. Tang Long said anxiously, "Xiao San, don't act on impulse. You're going to faint." Tang San stared coldly at the people of the Ocean sect, motionless. After waiting for 10 seconds, he staggered. At this time, he had lost the Ocean Hammer spirit, and the Azure Ivy had also been downgraded back to blue silver grass. He now only had the most ordinary blue silver grass spirit. Tang Long slapped his forehead in annoyance. "It's over. From today on, Tang San will no longer challenge the worldly wine, and will no longer get the wine of the tavern in any form. If you violate this oath, you will be punished by heaven and earth." Tang San roared in front of everyone, turned around and left. Everyone was shocked. After realizing the greatness and magic of the tavern, he was the first person who dared to break with the tavern publicly. Tang Long's face was complicated, and he did not stop Tang San again. Everyone in the Ocean sect also looked at Tang San with regret as he left. It's over, everything is over. Now Tang San, except for Tang Ao's bloodliner, has no connection with the Ocean sect. Even the Ocean Hammer, the symbol of the Ocean sect, is lost. Tang Xiao stood outside the tavern, watching Tang San leave, opened his mouth but said nothing. "That kid has a hot temper, a lot like Tang Ao," Douluo said with a smile. Ghost Douluo smiled strangely and nodded, "That's right, but he will regret it, he will definitely." Everyone in the spirit hall was watching the fun. Chapter 221. all prepared. There is still a lot of grudge between the Spirit Hall and the Clear Sky sect. Now that the Clear Sky sect is in trouble, the people at the Spirit Hall did not celebrate, which was very restrained. Pope Bibi Dong came to Liu Chang'an's side. Her words sent her disciple Liu to Liu Chang'an's team, which made her mind active again. Will Liu Chang'an have ideas about her now? In that case, Bibi Dong suppressed her excitement, smiled slightly, and asked, Chang'an, do you have confidence? Liu Chang'an glanced at this beautiful female pope, chuckled, and said, confidence? Not really, it's just a pastime. Yes, pastime, whether winning or losing, is only good for the tavern. And if he wants to be serious, with his omniscience and omnipotence in the tavern, and the various rewards he has received during this period, he can easily pile up hundreds of invincible geniuses of the same level. Bibi Dong nodded slightly, and then said, how do you plan to train them? Is there anything I can do to help? It's free, just consider it as my gratitude for accepting you as my disciple. Liu Chang'an shook his head and said, no need. Okay. Bibi Dong still had a smile on her face, but a hint of loss flashed in her eyes. Judging from Liu Chang'an's attitude, it seems that there is no change towards her. Then why would he listen to her plea? Bibi Dong was full of worries, worried about gains and losses, and she was thinking wildly about the simple behavior of Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an didn't pay attention to Bibi Dong. He chose Liu more because he was too lazy to make trouble. If it was other Soul Kings, he would have to explain the situation, so he just used Liu directly. Liu Chang'an looked at the 5 people, and the 5 people had different expressions. Zhu Zhuqing was indifferent. She had been Liu Chang'an's woman for a long time, and she would not panic no matter what happened. Zhu Zhuqing raised her head with a proud look. Last night, she got what she wanted and became Liu Chang'an's woman. Now she is very proud. If it weren't for Liu Chang'an's accumulated prestige, she would probably hug Liu Chang'an's arm now. Liu smiled sweetly. She was happy enough to get this quota. Liu Wolong's eyes were firm. This was an important part of her new life. Poison Douluo looked serious, but when he looked at Liu Chang'an, awe and restraint appeared in his eyes. Everyone in the tavern stared at them with wide eyes and envy. What kind of opportunities will they get if they are chosen by the boss? Liu Chang'an pondered for a moment and said, because it cannot exceed your current level, I can only increase you in aspects other than soul power, such as martial soul skills, fighting skills, etc. So, my improvement of each of your strength is inseparable from these points. Zhu King, Zhu Yun, you go to work first. Liu Chang'an first instructed the Zhu sisters. Zhu Zhuqing nodded lightly and turned to leave. Zhu Yun whispered, I'm the elder sister, you should call me first. Zhu Zhuqing looked at Liu Chang'an with resentment and left. Now there were only 3 people in front of Liu Chang'an. Liu Chang'an said again, Liu, your martial soul can be strengthened. I will evolve your martial soul during this period, let's evolve it into a 9-tailed celestial fox. Liu Chang'an pointed at Liu, and the light effect disappeared. Liu suddenly shook her butt, and like a blooming flower, 9 fluffy tails suddenly appeared. A heart-pounding breath spread out. The soul masters of the beast martial soul in the tavern were all palpitating, and looked at the 9-tailed fox phantom behind Liu in amazement. Liu's previous martial soul was already a top beast martial soul. Although it was not as good as the blue lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex martial soul, it was not much worse. But now that Liu Chang'an upgraded her, the strength of her martial soul has surpassed all the martial souls known on the mainland, even including the angel martial soul. Liu showed a look of surprise and said quickly, thank you, boss. Even if she couldn't keep the 9-tailed sky fox martial soul in the end, the insights she gained during this period would not disappear together. It would be of great benefit to her future development. Liu's changes made Liu Wolong and Poison Douluo look forward to it. It can be said that the martial soul and the innate soul power are the 2 pillars that determine how far a soul master can go. If you have innate soul power but no good martial soul, just like Tang San back then, the Spirit Hall would not care. And a top martial soul, even if the innate soul power is low, can surpass many soul masters with poor martial souls and high innate soul power, such as the typical example Liu Chang'an, who is now trapped in the 29th level of the Great Soul Master. But if it is replaced by a bad martial soul, even if the innate soul power is level 2, it may not be able to reach the level of the Great Soul Master. Liu's natural capital is excellent, and she is called the Golden Generation by the Spirit Hall. Now her martial soul has been greatly enhanced, and her future achievements are even more limitless. The same is true for you, and your martial souls are strengthened separately. Liu Chang'an waved his hand, and Poison Douluo and Liu Wolong immediately underwent a transformation. In the blink of an eye, their martial spirits all reached a new level, far surpassing the original first beast martial spirit, the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex. After the martial spirit, it is the fighting skills. You go to the stage to accept the challenge of everyone. Anyone who beats you can get a glass of fine wine. The difference in soul power does not exceed 20 levels. Liu Chang'an said with a smile. As soon as this was said, the eyes of the three people in the tavern seemed to flash green light. On the other side, the god of destruction took the 5 team members out of the Star Dou Great Forest, and in the blink of an eye, they appeared in the Killing City. This is the territory of the Sure God, but now it has become a no-man's land. The god of destruction brought them into the hall. He sat on the throne of the King of Killing, looked down at the 5 people, and said lightly, "I can give you limited help. Let your martial spirit be stained with the breath of destruction. Second, give you rich combat experience. Third, the killing god domain." Hearing this, the 5 people showed surprise on their faces. Being stained with the breath of the God King is no less than the positive evolution of the martial spirit. Training in the City of Slaughter is definitely the best place to hone your killing skills. The killing god domain, a great skill of a soul master, in terms of rarity, even surpasses the soul bone. Nine Rongrong raised her hand and said, "But, Your Excellency the God King, my martial soul is of the auxiliary system, and so are my soul skills. Even if I add the aura of destruction, how can I possibly defeat those people?" The god of destruction looked at her indifferently and nodded. "So, I want to transform your martial soul." "Transform?" Nine Rongrong was stunned for a moment. "Yes, come here." The god of destruction waved at her. Nine Rongrong approached in confusion, and according to the instructions of the god of destruction, she released the crystal-clear 8-story small tower. The god of destruction suddenly reached out and grabbed the small tower in Nine Rongrong's hand. The small tower trembled violently in an instant. Then, the crystal green tower body was suddenly stained with a layer of black color, and the structure of the small tower also changed. The eaves became more ostentatious, and black lines like blue veins appeared on the tower body. It's called the Nine Tribulations Tower, Chapter 222. Awesome. After Zhu Zhuqing got what she wanted, she was so proud that she hummed a little tune while serving as a maid, like a hen that had just laid an egg. She was so arrogant. She deliberately moved closer to Elena. "Nine-tailed heavenly fox, you are so powerful. My husband Chang'an is really willing to bless you." TSK. Elena looked at Zhu Zhuqing with a stiff smile on her face. This bitch, she took advantage of the situation and acted like a good girl. Isn't it just because she has a good sister? Otherwise, how could she climb into the boss's bed? Elena asked with a fake smile. "Speaking of which, have you found the person who knocked you out? You can only say that you drank the soup left by him." Zhu Zhuqing's face changed instantly. This was the thing she hated the most. She dressed up beautifully to go out, but was knocked out and intercepted by someone. If she hadn't been decisive and bold, she would have missed this opportunity again. You two are worthy at being master and disciple. You are both very good at making people angry. But what can this change? I have already got what I wanted, unlike someone who can only watch helplessly now. Zhu Zhuqing raised his chin and glanced at Elena's reaction jokingly. "Little guy, your nose is about to be crooked by anger, right? No matter what, you are also a loser." Elena snorted and stopped chatting with Zhu Zhuqing. If she continued chatting, she might really vomit acid. She couldn't help but scratch a few marks on this woman's face. Elena turned and walked to their side of the ring. Zhu Zhuqing showed a winner's smile. A mere little fox dared to fight with her. At this time, on the ring, Poison Douluo was competing with other title Douluos. Poison Douluo was originally one of the weakest title Douluos. Now his martial spirit has been strengthened. Although he is still the green scale Snake King, the increase in various attributes has far exceeded that of the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex. His current opponent is Chrysanthemum Douluo. The level difference between the two is 3 levels, and Poison Douluo's soul power is not dominant. But now the situation on the stage is that Poison Douluo is suppressing Chrysanthemum Douluo. Poison Douluo turned into a nearly 100-meter-long green python, with an extremely fast speed. When he swung his tail that was more than 10 meters long, it sounded like rolling thunder. In the air, Chrysanthemum, who was transformed into Chrysanthemum, was unable to dodge and was directly entangled by the snake's tail. Chrysanthemum spun rapidly, and its petals were like knives, cutting on the snake's tail with a clanging sound, and sparks flew. The golden light it emitted was wrapped in green light, and they fought fiercely. Old poison. You're really thick-skinned now. Chrysanthemum Douluo exclaimed. The green python laughed loudly, biting towards Chrysanthemum with its mouth, and the sound came out at the same time. Chrysanthemum Yuan, it seems that your strength is just like this now. Chrysanthemum Douluo shouted angrily. Old poison. Don't be so ungrateful. If the boss didn't give you this improvement, would you still challenge me? I'm so angry. The green python laughed heartily and didn't care. At least I'm stronger than you now, I'm happy. Chrysanthemum pass, get down. The green giant python suddenly tightened its body, completely surrounding Chrysanthemum. The green light swallowed the golden light, and the golden light only flickered. Boom. An explosion sounded. The green giant python completely shrank, and the Chrysanthemum trapped by it collapsed, and a figure fell. Chrysanthemum Douluo was thrown on the ring, dying. A few seconds later, a beam of light shone on him, and his injuries healed instantly. This also meant the defeat of Chrysanthemum Douluo. Chrysanthemum Douluo looked at the green giant python unwillingly, with a face full of dissatisfaction. Although he had relied on his level advantage to win and lose with Poison Douluo before, now, he was directly beaten by Poison Douluo. Poison Douluo didn't even use his soul skills, just relying on the tyranny of his martial soul, he broke him alive. Douluo received a cup of ice and fire yin and yang wine and angrily stepped down. Although there was a generous reward, it was really unpleasant. He didn't even push Poison Douluo to the limit. Ghost Douluo held Chrysanthemum Douluo, looked at Poison Douluo standing in the middle of the ring, and said, Old Poison, how about letting me and Old Chrysanthemum fight with you? Otherwise, it will be difficult to gain experience with your current strength. Poison Douluo didn't think much about it, and nodded, okay. You guys come up together. Chrysanthemum Douluo looked in Liu Chang'an's direction at this time, and asked, Boss, if I go up now, can I still get the wine reward? Liu Chang'an nodded slightly and smiled, of course you can. Except for the challenge form that has been defeated, any other form, such as your current combination, is a new form, and you can naturally get the wine incentive. Ghost Douluo's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, if we lose again, I challenge again by myself, can I also get the wine? Liu Chang'an smiled and said, of course. A 2-on-1 battle started quickly and ended quickly. Even if Chrysanthemum and Ghost Douluo worked together, they only forced out Poison Douluo's first soul skill. It was clearly a 100-year soul skill, but when Poison Douluo used it, it almost changed the situation. The audience was fascinated. Spirit Kite Douluo sighed, with this good fortune, Poison Douluo's strength may not even be matched by the original Great Priest. The advantage of the spirit is too strong. Fire Leopard Douluo nodded vigorously, his eyes envious, and said, I really envy this guy, he has a good granddaughter. Yes, if it weren't for his granddaughter working as a maid in the tavern, how could this great opportunity have come to him? Demon Bear Douluo said sourly. Who made us not have a good granddaughter? Snake Spear Douluo sighed. Fire Leopard Douluo chuckled, but we had the Pope. The titled Douluos immediately showed a meaningful smile. At this time, a deadly gaze shot over. Bibi Dong looked at them with a cold gaze. The titled Douluos all coughed awkwardly, turned their heads and looked around, not daring to meet Bibi Dong's eyes. Who else? Poison Douluo's arrogant voice resounded throughout the tavern. Liu Chang'an glanced at him indifferently, shook his head helplessly, and said, let Delina and Liu Wolong go up to challenge. You digest it? Yes, sir. Poison Douluo immediately became obedient, jumped down obediently, and dared not shout anymore. Liu Wolong went on stage. Her martial soul was the same as Poison Douluo. Although it had not evolved, the attributes of the martial soul were greatly improved, and it had exceeded the limit of the god-level martial soul. When the Soul Saint came on stage, there were many more challengers, especially those who were no more than 20 could challenge, even the titled Douluo could come on stage. The first one to come on stage was Chrysanthemum Douluo. The two sides went to war directly. What was shocking was that in the Soul Saint versus titled Douluo duel, although Liu Wolong was at a disadvantage, she did not lose immediately. Instead, she was able to persevere, and her resilience was incredible. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes were red, and they were envious and jealous. If I had received the gift from the boss, I could have done it too. It's a pity that the boss didn't choose me. Yes. I could have done it too. Why didn't you be braver at the time? A group of people beat their chests and stamped their feet. The more awesome Liu Wolong acted, the more they regretted it. If they had known that self-recommendation had a chance of success, they would have done it long ago. Chapter 223 How Can We Not Win? Liu Wolong challenged Douluo, and ended with a dragon roar full of unwillingness. The huge chrysanthemum trapped Liu Wolong, and the golden petals gathered towards Liu Wolong, spinning at high speed, with constant rustling sounds, and blood was gushing out of Liu Wolong's body. Although Liu Wolong's martial spirit was strong, she was only a soul saint after all. She was injured and exited the martial spirit possession state, and her body was covered in blood. A beam of light fell from the sky, not only recovering her injuries, but also restoring her clothes. Otherwise, Liu Wolong would have to face everyone naked. Douluo wiped the sweat from his forehead and nodded, saying, "Your little girl are already very powerful. If my soul power is a little worse, I may not be your opponent." Liu Wolong looked at Douluo and gritted her teeth and said, "Continue. I will challenge you again." Douluo's mouth twitched, wondering if he had provoked a fighting madman. "You should challenge Soul Douluo first. When you have more combat experience, I will continue to fight with you." Douluo stepped down from the stage. It was too dangerous to fight with Liu Wolong. He won with great effort, but there was no applause or cheers. Others would only think that it was natural for a title Douluo to defeat a soul saint. But if he lost, he would become a joke. It is estimated that the title of the shame of the title Douluo would fall on his head. Can't fight, let me do it." A vigorous and powerful voice sounded. A tall and thin old man jumped onto the stage and said to Liu Wolong, "The old lady is called Dragon Lord Mengxiu. Soul Douluo, how about taking advantage of you? Come and fight." Liu Wolong was very wild. The battle started soon. Liu Wolong's fighting style was open and closed, which was completely inconsistent with her image. It was more like the reckless fighting style of a sturdy man. Long Gong Mengxiu was quickly defeated, his blood boiling, and he retreated to the stage. He looked at Liu Wolong with lingering fear and sighed, "I'm not as good as you." "Thank you." Liu Wolong clasped his fists. Long Gong Mengxiu shook his head slightly, his face complicated. At this moment, he deeply felt the changes after the arrival of the Tavern. A soul master no longer relies on hard practice to change his fate, but on whether he can get the gift of the Tavern. As long as one step succeeds, he may be able to jump over the Dragon Gate and completely change his fate. Unfortunately, Long Gong Mengxiu looked back at his granddaughter. If his granddaughter could become a tavern maid, he might also have the opportunity to get the boss's gift like poisoned Luo. And there are only benefits and no harm for his granddaughter to join the tavern. If he gets the favor of the boss, Long Gong Mengxiu became more and more excited as he thought about it. "It's my turn to play. Senior Liu, give me a chance." Yelena shouted with a smile. Liu Wolong glanced at Yelena and nodded slightly. These two hearty battles completely swept away the depression in her chest. However, when she saw Yelena, she thought of Bibi Dong, and she felt uncomfortable. That woman and she both fell in love with Liu Chang'an, which was blind. But the other party withdrew first, and then jokingly watched her struggling in the quagmire of Liu Chang'an. "I always feel that I am looked down upon, which makes me unhappy. Especially since the other party has established a connection with the tavern owner, she is even more arrogant, as if she is always laughing at her." Liu Wolong left the stage and Yelena came up. Coincidentally, at this time, Bibi Dong cast her eyes over and nodded slightly to Liu Wolong. Liu Wolong felt a surge of anger in his heart, and secretly thought, "Is this woman showing off to me? Is she laughing at me for only figuring it out now?" Yelena came on stage, and she was going to challenge her brother, Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu held the moon blade and looked at his sister. Thinking of the terrifying increase in the previous two people, he smiled and said, "Sister, you have to hold back a little. Our soul power levels are the same. Don't kill me in 1 second." Yelena smiled and said, "Don't worry, brother. Don't be afraid of hurting me. Attack with all your strength." "Okay." Xiao Wu roared and rushed towards Yelena. Yelena only released her martial spirit at this time, and 9 large snow-white tails appeared behind her. As soon as the tails appeared, the entire arena space seemed to be distorted. Yelena's charm is released at all times, and at the moment of martial spirit possession, this charm power reaches its peak. When Xiao Wu saw Yelena's charm during the sprint, he immediately sprayed blood from his nose. The martial spirit collapsed and directly exited the martial spirit possession state. Xiao Wu covered his nose, his face flushed with shame, and turned around and ran off the stage. It was so embarrassing. He couldn't even withstand Yelena's passive. Yelena blinked her eyes and scanned the crowd in the audience. Almost half of the men were caught off guard and had nosebleeds. "Fairy sister, please take back your magic power." My brother can't bear it anymore. Can't live anymore, please spare us. ... The current tavern can be described as full of wailing. Ermin was anxious. They still had to clean the tavern. He hurriedly shouted, "No one is allowed to bleed from the nose. Stop it quickly." Leona hurriedly retracted her martial soul, at a loss. Is her temptation so great? Is it too exaggerated? Among the 5 team members selected by Liu Chang'an, 3 of them have already demonstrated the results of their strength improvement. They can only be described in 4 words. Terrifying. If they can solidify, they will definitely be invincible in the same level. Both are titled Luo, but one side didn't even force the other's soul skills out. A soul Saint can actually cross 2 major realms and fight back and forth with a titled Luo. Soul King versus Soul King, the other can't even withstand a basic charm. How can they fight? Although they had never seen how the god of destruction trained, the people in the tavern could not imagine how the 5 people in the tavern would lose. Especially the remaining 2, the Zhu sisters. The gifts they received must be the strongest. Bibi Dong's eyes flashed. She must want Liu Chang'an to win. In this case, why didn't she go to the god of destruction to spy on the information? This is also a move to bring the 2 sides closer, right? Thinking of this, Bibi Dong's mouth corners slightly raised. Seeing Bibi Dong's smile, Liu Wolong's eyes flashed with doubt. Is this woman laughing at herself? At night, the Zhu sisters stayed in Liu Chang'an's room. Sisters, of course, can't be separated. Zhu Zhuqing frowned at her sister and said, "You just lost your virginity last night, why did you come here?" Zhu Zhuqing said confidently, "Of course I have to do business. The 3 of them have gifts, and their strength has become so strong. I'm also anxious. Shouldn't I ask Chang'an how to deal with it?" Zhu Zhuqing looked at her sister suspiciously. Although she said so, she still felt that it was very likely that they talked about bed. They are all daughters of the Zhu family. Who doesn't know each other's desires in this regard? Anyway, what I said makes sense. Zhu Zhuqing said, while sitting on Liu Chang'an's bed, pulling up her trouser legs. It was a dense black stocking. ... Zhu Zhuqing's mouth twitched fiercely. Who wears such a sexy outfit to talk about serious things? Chapter 224. Enlightenment. As soon as Liu Chang'an returned to the room, he heard a burst of laughter. As soon as he opened the door, Zhu Zhuqing was holding a black object in her hand and waving it above her head. Zhu Zhuqing's face flushed, and she grabbed her collar and tried to grab the black object. Seeing Liu Chang'an coming in, Zhu Zhuqing glared at Zhu Zhuqing fiercely. She didn't check for a moment, and this pervert took off her underwear. "You should come and take care of her, she's going crazy," Zhu Zhuqing said with a smile. "Chang'an must like me to do this," I said. The 2 sisters will lie side by side and see who Chang'an will choose first. Liu Chang'an shook his head and said, "Don't say these things that are not suitable for children. Are you anxious?" "I'm not anxious." Zhu Zhuqing pouted. Zhu Zhuqing stuffed the black underwear into Liu Chang'an's hand, and said with a chuckle, "Okay, I was anxious. They have all been strengthened so much, but Zhuqing and I haven't yet." Liu Chang'an put the black bra on the table and chuckled. "I'm still improving them, how can I ignore you too? Zhu, you should learn from Zhuqing." Yes, Zhuqing is the best." Zhu Zhuqing hugged Zhu Zhuqing's waist. The 2 of them now have almost the same figure, and even their hair is long and straight black. One is charming and the other is cold, like ice and fire, full of temptation. Liu Chang'an said, "Let me think about your martial spirits and soul skills." Liu Chang'an actually likes their black cats very much. Zhu Zhuqing has already strengthened it before, and now he can copy it to Zhu Zhuqing. As for other aspects, such as soul rings and soul bones, Liu Chang'an can of course give them soul rings and soul bones of 1,000,000 years, no problem. The system rewards obtained during this period are rich in materials. But this kind of routine improvement, Liu Chang'an thought for a moment, and finally found something interesting in the system rewards, and smiled. "I got it. The improvement I want to give you is neither soul bone nor martial soul." "What is that?" Zhu Zhuqing asked curiously. Zhu Zhuqing also looked at Liu Chang'an, and her curiosity was aroused. Liu Chang'an smiled slightly, stretched out his hand, and 2 balls of light appeared in his palm. The 2 balls of light floated to the 2 women respectively and entered their heads. The eyes of the 2 women became dull in an instant, as if they were digesting something. In Gilliana's room, Daitian, Baji, and Ziji all came to discuss matters. Gilliana's injuries have not recovered yet, and she doesn't even dare to challenge the world wine. The stronger the strength and the higher the level of life, the less she wants to take this risk. Who knows what the difficulty of the challenge will become? However, Giuena supports the fierce beasts under her command to actively challenge, and is also happy to see them related to Liu Chang'an. Ziji, are you sure you can breed the boss's bloodliner? Giuena looked at Ziji and asked. Ziji stroked her flat belly without a trace of fat, nodded vigorously and said, I have locked it up. Not a drop of blood has leaked out. And I use the secret method of the True Blood Dragon clan, so it will definitely be conceived. Giuena nodded slightly and smiled. Yes, if there is really blood, then you are the greatest contributor to the soul beast. Ziji was excited and said excitedly, I will definitely complete the task. Give birth to the strongest blood of the dragon clan. Baiji looked strange and hesitated. Ziji put her arm around her shoulders and said with a smile, Abi, although your race does not have this advantage, you will definitely be able to do it if you come a few more times. The boss likes you very much. If you, Ziji. Baiji blushed and glared at Ziji angrily. The Lord and Daijin are watching here, and Ziji is still talking nonsense. Do you want Ziji to live? Giuena smiled slightly and said, Biji, what Ziji said is not without reason. The thing that can most affect the God realm now is the tavern. Either challenge the worldly wine, or get involved with the tavern owner. And giving birth to his bloodline is undoubtedly the most profound involvement. Biji smiled awkwardly, her face turned redder. Even the master started to make trouble. Do I really have to climb into the boss's bed like Ziji did? Although I do like my boss, it would be too degrading to do so. In the room of the Seven Treasures Glazed Tile sect, Nine Fengzi welcomed Jianluo, who came over into the room. After hearing that Giluo and Nine Rongrong were chosen by the God of Destruction for special training, Jianluo smiled and said, Old Yu was quite lucky. I wonder if he can catch up with me after this. Uncle Yu's martial spirit is strong to begin with. With the guidance of the God of Destruction, he will definitely make great progress. Uncle Jian, you are now. Nine Fengzi couldn't see through Jianluo's soul power. Jianluo no longer looked like an unsheathed sword, but more like an ordinary person. Jianluo smiled and said, it's only one step away from level 99. Jianzhuifeng wine is tailor-made for me. Every time I taste it, I can gain a deep understanding. Nine Fengzi nodded slightly, and the joy in his eyes became stronger. Perhaps, this generation of the Seven Treasures Glazed sect will have a divine guardian. If the tavern is not counted, the Seven Treasures Glazed sect will be able to surpass the Ocean sect and become the #1 sect in the world. And these achievements were achieved in his generation. How could he not be happy? Fengzi, who do you think will win between the boss and the God of Destruction? Jianluo asked. Winning or losing is not important. If the boss wants to win, it must be the boss. Moreover, the God of Destruction proposed this bet, which is obviously to bring fun to the boss. Nine Fengzi shook his head. From the beginning, this bet existed only to please Liu Chang'an. There is really no need to consider winning or losing. Jianluo nodded and said, when I came here, I happened to meet Douluo. He invited me to fight him tomorrow. It seems that the boss really gave him a lot of confidence. Nine Fengzi smiled and nodded, saying, indeed. Douluo's current strength is said to have surpassed the 3 former peerless Luos. Oh? Then I really want to challenge him. Jianluo said again, I just don't know how little Rongrong is doing. She is an auxiliary spirit master, but she was also chosen by the God of Destruction. It's puzzling. Yes, Rongrong's martial spirit is probably going to change. Nine Fengzi smiled bigly. If Nine Rongrong's martial spirit is no longer the 8 Treasures Glazed Pagoda, then if she wants to become the successor of the sect master, I'm afraid there will be many people who oppose it. The City of Slaughter. This was originally the place for the God of Shura to select a successor, but now the God of Shura has fallen. The God of Destruction came here and operated to drain the divinity of this place, blessing the 5 people with the domain of the God of Killing, and let their martial spirits get the breath of destruction. Next, it was actual combat. The God of Destruction allowed them to freely challenge in the hell-killing field. With this reliance, their combat power could be rapidly improved. Nine Rongrong transformed from an auxiliary spirit master to a strong attack spirit master, and was the most active, making a great reputation in the killing field. Chapter 225 Unlucky Tangsan. Another group of noobs has arrived. Nine Rongrong arrived at the hell-killing ground first, looking at the 9 people who came in proudly. Now the rules of the killing city have been changed by the God of Destruction. In the hell-killing ground, everyone can use soul skills, but they will be strongly suppressed at a level. In other words, here, the soul skills used by the Soul King and the Soul Lord have exactly the same effect, and they are all in the category of 100-year soul skills. Everyone join forces. This girl is the Magic Tower girl who suddenly came in 3 days ago and has never been defeated. Her magic tower is very powerful, that's right. And even if we don't join forces, her magic tower will directly attack all of us. 9 wrong wrong. The last voice sounded very abruptly. Tang San looked at 9 wrong wrong in astonishment. They had been classmates for a period of time. They didn't have conflicts like in the original book, but they were not very harmonious. After all, 9 wrong wrong's little witch's personality is difficult for ordinary people to deal with. Tang San? Why are you here? 9 wrong wrong was also stunned. You know, in a place like the Slaughter City, people are either extremely vicious or desperate, but those who can survive are all very fierce characters. And Tang San is only 13 years old this year, how could he be so careless as to come here? To become stronger. Tang San said slowly. Yes, of course, she wanted to strengthen herself. After leaving the tavern, his cultivation was stuck in a bottleneck and progressed slowly, so Liu Chang'an thought about it and sent him to the Slaughter City. Only by sharpening the sharpest will here can you break the limit. As for why Liu Chang'an didn't come that year, he was not stupid and would never put himself in such a dangerous situation. After hearing Tang San's words, 9 wrong wrong slapped her forehead and sighed. Oh, Tang San, you are so unlucky. This time, you have come here for nothing. What do you mean? Tang San was puzzled. After the arrival of the God of Destruction, the rules here have changed. Even if you win 100 games and become the God of Killing here, you won't have the God of Killing domain. Anyway, I can only explain this much to you. For the sake of being classmates, I can take you out. 9 wrong wrong shook her head and sighed. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Tang San's eyes widened, revealing an expression of disbelief. The reason why he came to the City of Slaughter and faced such a dangerous situation was for the legendary God of Killing domain. But now 9 wrong wrong told him that it was gone. Fuck. Then he came here in vain. This is not a safe place, it's the City of Slaughter. That's right. The God of Destruction said that the Azure God has been reincarnated, and there is no need to choose a successor here. So, if a group of criminals escape, they will endanger one side. Letting them get out alive is the greatest favor to them. 9 wrong wrong imitated the tone of the God of Destruction. Tang San was struck by lightning. At this moment, the others couldn't wait any longer, and all released various martial spirits and rushed over. They all learned from others that if they wanted to defeat 9 wrong wrong, they had to kill her before she used her martial spirit, or get as close as possible. Kill. Don't give the Magic Tower girl a chance to release her martial spirit. Don't just stand there. Attack together. 8 people summoned various martial spirits and rushed towards 9 wrong wrong. 9 wrong wrong was not panicked at all. A gloomy and terrifying ancient tower appeared in front of her, and each floor of the ancient tower emitted a faint cold light. You guys think you can go against this young lady? Go. 9 wrong wrong's 3 soul rings flashed at the same time, and the first 3 floors of the tower burst into light at the same time. The next second, 3 colors of light balls were sprayed out and hit the 8 people. No one could dodge. Some of the light balls were flames, some were thunder, and some were rocks. All 8 people screamed. A few seconds later, they all fell to the ground. 9 wrong wrong clapped her hands, looked at Tang San, and said with a smile, Tang San, you don't want to fight me, right? Just admit defeat. Tang San sighed, his eyes were extremely complicated. He could see that 9 wrong wrong's martial soul was too strong now, and so are her spirit skills. She released such terrifying spirit skills, and 3 of them, and attacked 8 people at the same time, but 9 wrong wrong didn't look weak at all. It was as if this consumption was just a drop in the bucket for her. This was the improvement brought to her by the God of Destruction. She transformed from a powerless auxiliary spirit master to what she is now. So, what if it was me? Although under Liu Chang'an's teaching, he believed that everything should be done by oneself and could not rely on external forces, but this transformation was too wide-catching. I give up. Tang San said bigly. Even if he had a wealth of hidden weapons and magical martial arts, he still knew that he would not be 9 wrong wrong's opponent. The martial soul gap was too big. There are now a total of 5 in the whole killing field. On the other side of Bone Luo, who had just won the challenge, a light gate flashed and Sword Luo suddenly came out of it. Seeing Sword Luo come in, Bone Luo immediately walked over and laughed. Old Sword, how did you find me? Sword Luo's mouth twitched and said, I was defeated by Poison Luo. Then I came to see you. What level have you reached in your cultivation now? What? You were defeated by Poison Duo? How is it possible? That old Poison, that's right, he is now being instructed by the boss. Can you tell me about his situation? Bone Duo asked curiously. Sword Duo said slowly, very strong. I used all my strength, but I probably only forced out 80% of his strength. His martial spirit is originally a top-level beast martial spirit, but it has been strengthened by the boss and is estimated to have far surpassed the god level. So terrifying. But if that's all, I won't admit defeat. Boom! Bone Duo shouted in a deep voice, and then, from the shadows behind him, a huge bone dragon emitting purple and black energy suddenly walked out, and the ground shook with every step it took. Old sword, let's have a fight. Let's see how I compare to you now. Bone Duo said in a battle-like manner. Sword Duo smiled and said, okay. I came here to help you get familiar with the power. I think you want to teach me a lesson. Bone Duo chuckled. The next second, Bone Duo retreated directly into the bone dragon, and the bone dragon suddenly raised its head and let out a thunderous roar. Watch out for the sword. Sword Duo shouted in a deep voice, and the 7-killing sword in his hand suddenly burst into dazzling silver light, full of murderous intent. The next second, he raised the sword and slashed at the bone dragon. Boom. Half an hour later, Sword Duo and Bone Duo landed again. Bone Duo's face was deep. You just said that you lost to Poison Duo? Sword Duo had a faint smile on his face. He won the sparring just now. He nodded and said, that's right. Old Bone, if it were you who went up, you should have some advantages. You are very resistant to poison. But Bone Duo's face did not look better because of this. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.